a Manhattan billionaire, meticulously orchestrating the purchase of his extravagant engagement cake alongside his perfectly curated fiancée, finds his carefully constructed life violently interrupted by the sudden reappearance of a past love, who happens to be holding a secret, his child. Welcome to the world of secrets narrated. Before we dive into the details, tell us in the comments which city you are tuning in from. It fuels us to see how far our truths travel. When the final word drops, please remember to rate this journey from 0 to 10 and share your rawest feelings about the twists and turns. And if emotional stories, thick with hidden truths and shocking revelations, are your obsession, ensure you've followed Secrets Narrated so you never miss a confession. Now, settle in, unwind, and prepare to absorb every painful detail. The late morning sun, defiant and brilliant, sliced through the colossal, floor-to-ceiling windows of sweetness and light, Manhattan's undisputed sovereign of luxury confectionery. Golden dust motes danced above displays of delicate, jewel-toned macarons and bespoke artisan chocolates. Nathaniel Rowe, a man whose presence usually dominated any room, subtly smoothed the lapel of his custom charcoal suit jacket, catching the light glinting off his heavy, reliable Patek Philippe watch. 10:30 a.m. The schedule was honored, down to the second. This is truly transcendental, darling. Clarissa Vaughn's voice, a mezzo-soprano practiced in the nuanced pitch of elite socialites and boardroom diplomacy, carried a tone of mandatory, rehearsed delight. Her perfectly sculpted, French-manicured finger trailed lightly over the crystallized edge of a towering, three-tiered vanilla cake that was meticulously adorned with spun sugar peonies. So various, don't you agree? Nathaniel offered a stiff nod, his steel blue eyes skimming the architectural perfection of the cake without absorbing its beauty. At 40, he had refined the art of the appropriate non-committal response to a surgical degree. It is suitably elegant, he conceded, the word feeling dry and insincere even to his own ear. The confectioner, a woman whose apron was dusted white with the sweet evidence of her craft, beamed at their perceived consensus. A magnificent choice. The Madagascar vanilla paired with champagne buttercream is our true signature. Immensely popular for, shall we say, high-profile engagements. High profile. That was the core truth of this entire ritual. A strategic fusion of two powerful social and financial dynasties, expertly disguised beneath layers of luxurious fondant and public goodwill. Nathaniel's highly paid therapist defined his coping mechanism as emotional compartmentalization, a necessary expertise he'd mastered over years of steady anxiety medication and rigid, highly structured schedules. We will require it scaled for 300 guests, Clarissa instructed, her enormous cushion-cut diamond engagement ring flashing blindingly as she gestured with imperious grace. The Plaza Ballroom, naturally. 300 guests. 300 perfectly positioned witnesses to what should have been the happiest day of his life, yet felt chillingly like the final closing paperwork on a monumental and soul-crushing business acquisition. The archaic brass bell positioned above the shop entrance gave a sharp, definitive chime. Nathaniel glanced up, a purely reflexive action, and in that instant, he felt his entire, predictable world abruptly lurch and tilt violently off its axis. Elena Whitaker stood framed in the doorway, her long auburn hair catching the oblique morning light, transforming it into burnished copper. She wore a simple, unadorned navy dress that somehow emphasized the easy, natural curve of her body, and cradled in her arms was a small, vibrant little girl. She possessed a chaotic tangle of dark hair and the most intensely striking blue eyes Nathaniel had ever encountered. Eyes that were an exact, agonizing mirror image of his own. "Mommy, is this the place where you make the princess cakes?" The child's voice was a pure, sweet chime of innocent curiosity, her tiny hands reaching yearningly toward a shelf lined with cupcakes topped with shimmering, edible glitter. "Yes, sweetheart. This is Mommy's shop." Elena's voice. It was softer, richer than he remembered, smoothed and worn gentle by years of quiet affirmations and tender bedtime stories. Nathaniel's lungs seized, his chest cavity constricted painfully. For years since he'd heard that specific cadence, since he'd seen those luminous green eyes that once looked at him as if he were the sole anchor of her universe. Now, those same eyes were focused entirely, devotedly, on the little girl in her arms. Their little girl. The tenderness radiating from Elena made his throat burn with a devastating mixture of longing and shame. Nathaniel. Clarissa's voice sounded muffled, distant, as if transmitted from miles underwater. You've gone quite pale. Are you feeling entirely well? He couldn't speak. He couldn't even effectively draw air. The towering, meticulously maintained emotional walls he had constructed over 2 decades were not just cracking. They were disintegrating, revealing a catastrophic interior containing 4 years of unaddressed regret, agonizing longing, and a profound truth he had been too proud, too cowardly, and too deeply terrified to confront. Elena still hadn't registered him. She was crouched low, deftly adjusting the neckline of the little girl's bright pink sweater, her movements imbued with practiced, maternal love. The child, Luna, his mind supplied with unnerving clarity, though he had no logical reason to know the name, was chattering happily about the cakes, her tiny fingers pointing excitedly at the edible art. She is utterly beautiful, Clarissa murmured, her eyes following Nathaniel's fixed gaze. What an absolutely adorable little family. The word family impacted him with the stunning force of a physical blow. Precisely this easy, shared warmth, this undeniable, visible love, this perfect small girl who possessed his eyes and Elena's smile. This should have been his life. But he had prioritized rigid control over the chaos of passion, stability over genuine connection, choosing the safe, predictable harbor of a woman who would never, ever challenge him, over the exhilarating, destructive storm of the woman who had loved him with her entire heart. Elena finally straightened, her hand automatically smoothing Luna's already neat hair, and their eyes met across the gleaming marble counter of the confectionery. Time ceased its flow. Her face drained instantly of color, her lips parting slightly in an expression of pure, unadulterated shock. Luna, beautifully oblivious to the dangerous current of tension now crackling between the adults, tugged insistently on her mother's dress. "Mommy, can we get the one with the butterfly?" Elena's gaze remained locked on Nathaniel's. In the depths of her green eyes, he recognized the accumulated weight of 4 years, the exhaustion of single parenthood, undeniable fierce strength, and something else. A protective sharpness that had never been present before. The hardness of a woman who had taught herself to be wholly sufficient for 2 people. "Mr. Rowe?" The confectioner's voice cut the silence like an improperly tuned instrument. "Shall we proceed to finalize the finer details for your cake?" His engagement cake. To a woman who wasn't Elena, purchased while his daughter, stood mere feet away, asking her true mother for a butterfly cupcake. Nathaniel felt the fragile scaffolding of his composure utterly shatter. "We need to leave," he said abruptly, the words escaping as a rough, unintelligible sound. "We will call you later today." "But darling," Clarissa started, her tone immediately shifting from socialite charm to genuine irritation. Now, the command came out far harsher than intended, but he could not remain stationary for another split second. Not with Luna's innocent, melodic voice echoing in the space where his presence should have been anchored for the last 3.5 years. He turned sharply and strode toward the exit, his expensive Italian leather shoes hitting the marble floor, his legs feeling weak and unreliable. As he passed Elena, he was enveloped by the faintest, most devastating scent. Vanilla and something utterly, uniquely her. It instantly transported him back, to sun-drenched Sunday mornings tangled in silk sheets, to whispered midnight promises, to shared, optimistic dreams. "Nathaniel," she breathed, and hearing his name on her lips felt like a prayer and a self-inflicted curse all at once. He did not stop. He physically could not, because if he paused, if he dared to look back at his daughter's face one last time, he knew he might never possess the strength to leave. And he was not remotely ready to face the overwhelming truth waiting for him in those devastatingly familiar blue eyes. The private elevator to Nathaniel's sprawling penthouse felt less like transportation and more like an ascending cage, carrying him further away from reality. Clarissa's designer heels clicked sharply against the imported Italian marble as they entered the apartment. Her voice a precise, high-pitched buzz discussing guest lists and exotic floral arrangements. But all Nathaniel could hear was the ghost echo of a little girl asking about butterfly cupcakes. "Darling, you are absolutely not listening to a word I am saying." Clarissa's tone sharpened, achieving the laser precision of a woman accustomed to instantaneously commanding attention in pressurized, male-dominated boardrooms. She stopped before the floor-to-ceiling windows, her statuesque silhouette framed perfectly against the unforgiving Manhattan skyline. Nathaniel slowly loosened his silk tie, his hands betraying a barely perceptible tremor. "I heard you," he lied, avoiding eye contact. "Then what, precisely, did I just say about the seating arrangements for the Vanderbilt wing?" He couldn't answer. He had genuinely heard nothing. His entire consciousness remained trapped inside that fragrant confectionery, relentlessly replaying every detail. Luna's sweet, innocent chatter, the shock and pain etched onto Elena's face, and the crushing weight of the alternate life that should have been his. "Nathaniel." Clarissa's voice sliced through his spiraling thoughts like a razor blade. "Tell me what just happened back there." He walked immediately to his fully stocked home bar, poured 3 generous fingers of single malt whiskey, and swallowed it in one continuous, fiery gulp. The alcohol provided zero solace against the emotional tempest raging in his core. "Someone I used to know. Used to know." She repeated the phrase slowly, deliberately, her honed lawyer's instincts immediately sensing vulnerability and potential danger. That woman. With the child. The word child caused his stomach muscles to clench violently. Not just any child. His child. A magnificent little girl with his eyes and Elena's smile who had spent 3.5 years growing up without him because he had been too proud, too arrogant, and too fundamentally cowardly to embrace the truth. "It's complicated. Uncomplicated." Clarissa moved closer, her expensive, cold perfume, a sharp jasmine, invading his suddenly fragile space. "I do not appreciate mysteries, Nathaniel, especially not from my fiancée." Fiancée. The word felt utterly alien on his tongue now, like attempting to speak a language he had suddenly and irrevocably forgotten. How could he possibly proceed with marrying Clarissa when every nerve ending in his body was screaming Elena's name? His phone vibrated violently. A text from his dedicated assistant. "Meeting with Sustainability Board moved to tomorrow. Your afternoon is clear." Clear. Nothing about his existence felt remotely clear anymore. "I need fresh air," he managed, already reaching desperately for his suit jacket. "We have the florist consultation in an hour, Nathaniel." "Cancel it. Cancel everything." The words came out harder, radiating a palpable urgency that surprised even him, but he was drowning beneath the suffocating weight of his own profound cowardice. "I need time to think clearly." He left Clarissa standing alone in their sterile, pristine apartment, surrounded by stacks of glossy wedding magazines and the hollow, brittle echo of a life that now felt entirely borrowed. Sweetness and light was bathed in the quieter, more contemplative light of the late afternoon. Through the large front window, Nathaniel could clearly see Elena behind the polished counter, her striking auburn hair pulled back carelessly into a messy, practical bun, flour dusting the deep navy fabric of her apron. In the far corner, Luna sat at a tiny table, coloring with the formidable, intense focus that only children possess. His daughter. The reality of the words still struggled to penetrate his conscious mind. The shop bell chimed softly as he entered, and Elena immediately looked up. This time there was no reflex action. This time he did not run. "We are actually closed now," she said quietly, neutrally, yet she made no move whatsoever to usher him toward the exit. "I know," his voice was coarse and used. "I saw the sign outside." Luna lifted her head from her coloring book. Her wide blue eyes, his eyes, studied him with open, innocent curiosity. "Mommy, who's that man?" The simple question struck him with the force of a physical impact. She didn't know him. This perfect, tiny human being who shared half his DNA looked at him as if he were merely an anonymous shadow, which, he supposed, was exactly what he was. Just someone Mommy used to know, sweetheart. Elena responded gently. Why don't you try to finish coloring your princess castle? Luna nodded diligently and returned to her activity, humming a simple, cheerful tune that made Nathaniel's chest ache with an unexpected, profound tenderness. She is beautiful, he whispered, the sound raw. Elena's hand stilled on the damp dish rag she was using to methodically wipe the counter. Yes, she is. Elena, I need to know the truth. Not here. Her voice was firm, decisive, but held no trace of malice. Luna. Baby, can you go play in Mommy's office for a few minutes? I left some brand new stickers in the top desk drawer. The little girl's face instantly brightened. The sparkly ones? The sparkly ones. Luna gathered her crayons with happy efficiency and skipped toward a door marked private, her small feet making almost no sound on the warm hardwood floor. The profound innocence of her joy was a brutal, heartbreaking contrast to the volatile tension crackling between the two adults she had left behind. Once the office door clicked shut, Elena turned to face him fully. For years had profoundly altered her. There was an unyielding, quiet strength in her posture that hadn't existed before, a confident resilience that spoke of difficult, solitary battles fought and won. You want to know if she is yours? It was a statement, not a question. Nathaniel's throat felt lined with sandpaper. Is she? Elena's laugh was soft, utterly devoid of humor, and sharply bitter. Do you genuinely need to ask that? Look at her eyes, Nathaniel. Look at the specific way she tilts her head when she's concentrating. Look at the incredibly stubborn streak she inherited when she decides she absolutely will not eat her vegetables. Each spoken word was a precise, twisting knife in his gut. All those moments, all those irreplaceable firsts, first steps, first garbled words the first day of pre-K. He had willfully forfeited them all. Why didn't you? Didn't I what? Elena's voice momentarily rose in frustration, then immediately softened, the ingrained habit of protecting Luna's peace overriding her anger. Didn't I try to tell you? I did try, Nathaniel. I came to your penthouse when I was 8 months pregnant. 8 months. Do you remember exactly what you said to me? He remembered. Dear God. He remembered every single cruel, defensive word he had spat out. I don't want this complication in my life. You're pregnant? That's utterly impossible. You're just trying to trap me. The memory made him feel physically nauseous. I was scared, he whispered, his defense pathetic and hollow. You were scared? Elena's composure fractured slightly, revealing the raw pain beneath. I was 28 years old, pregnant, and catastrophically alone. My entire family was 3,000 miles away in Oregon. I had no support system, zero money saved specifically for a baby. And the man I loved, the man whose child I was carrying, told me I was a liar and ordered me to get out of his life. Every word was true, every accusation fully justified, yet they still flayed him alive. I thought we were using protection, he mumbled, grasping for any explanation. We were, she countered swiftly, but nothing in life is 100% effective, and you know that. Elena wrapped her arms tightly around herself, a familiar protective gesture he recognized from the peak of their most volatile arguments. That night, the night we had the massive fight about your work schedule, remember? You came home at 2 a.m. We argued violently. Then we made up. We were both highly emotional, not thinking clearly about anything other than bridging the distance that was already growing between us with desperate passion instead of honest communication. He remembered the desperation. Elena, if I had just known. You did know. I told you, and you made the conscious choice not to believe me. Her voice was level now, but he could clearly see the fresh, enduring pain in her green eyes. So I executed the only logical option available to me. I figured it out alone. From the inner office came the faint, sweet sound of Luna's voice, singing softly to herself. The melody was hauntingly familiar. A gentle lullaby Elena used to hum when insomnia plagued her. What is her full name? He asked quietly. Luna Grace Whitaker. Not Roe. She didn't bear his name because he had refused to grant her the basic right to it. I've been paying child support, Elena added abruptly. To myself, every single month, I systematically put money aside in a dedicated savings account for her. Money I truly couldn't afford to spare, but I saved it anyway, because I thought perhaps someday you might actually want to be her father. And I didn't want your vast fortune to be the only reason you showed up. The devastating generosity of that gesture, the faint flicker of hope it implied, finally shattered the last remnant of his internal defenses. Elena, I need you to grasp something important. She moved subtly closer, near enough that he could detect her specific, familiar scent of vanilla and comforting warmth. Luna is my entire world. She is joyful, healthy, and loved beyond measure. If you genuinely want to be a part of her life, it must be because you sincerely desire to be her father, not because you feel guilt or obligation. And us? The words slipped out raw and unplanned. What about us? Elena's smile was profoundly sad and achingly beautiful. There is no us, Nathaniel. You were getting married, remember? I saw the highly public engagement announcement in the Times. The engagement. Clarissa. The entire meticulously organized life he had constructed on the fragile foundation of pretending Elena never existed. That's not, he cut himself off. What could he possibly say? That it wasn't true love? That he had been desperately trying to replace her with a pale, cold imitation? That for 4 agonizing years, he had thought about her every day, wondering obsessively what might have been? You should leave now, Elena said gently, decisively. Luna will be getting sleepy soon, and she becomes impossibly cranky when her strict routine is disrupted. He nodded, even though every instinct screamed at him to stay, to demand more time, more profound answers, more chances to somehow repair what he had catastrophically broken. At the door, he turned back one last time. Elena, I know I was wrong about everything. I am truly sorry. Her eyes softened ever so slightly in recognition. I know. Can I see her again? Properly, I mean, not like this. Elena remained silent for a long moment, considering the immense risk she was taking. She goes to Riverside Park every Saturday morning at precisely 10 a.m. She likes to feed the ducks. It was not forgiveness, not even close, but it was an essential door left slightly ajar. As he walked away from the silent confectionery, Nathaniel felt the careful, oppressive architecture of his controlled life finally crumbling around him. But for the very first time in 4 years, the resulting destruction felt frighteningly like true freedom. Saturday morning dawned, painted with the crisp, clean air of late autumn that made Central Park look like a masterpiece of natural art. Nathaniel stood rigid at the edge of Riverside Park at 9:45 a.m. 15 minutes early, clutching a pathetic small bag of commercial duck feed he'd purchased from a skeptical street vendor. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped, desperate, caged bird. Sleep had been non-existent. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Luna's face. The quizzical tilt of her head while coloring, the soft melody of her humming, those startling, accusatory blue eyes that were indisputably mirrors of his own. For the first time in 4 years, his usual anxiety medication felt utterly inadequate against the internal storm. You're early. Elena's voice, quiet and observational, made him spin around. She approached, Luna skipping with infectious energy beside her. The little girl was encased in a bright yellow rain slicker and miniature rain boots decorated with cheerful cartoon frogs. In her small hands, she tightly clutched a rattling paper bag that clearly held dry crackers. I brought bread for the duckies, Mommy, Luna announced proudly, then stopped abruptly when she noticed Nathaniel. Oh, it's the man from your shop. Yes, sweetheart. Elena's voice was meticulously neutral, non-committal. This is Nathaniel. He wanted to come feed the ducks today, too. Luna studied him with the fearless, unwavering curiosity inherent in childhood. Do you like ducks? The simple, earnest question nearly undid him completely. Yes, I do. They're my friends, Luna declared with the absolute certainty of a 3-year-old expert. Especially the one with the green head. His name is Captain Quack. Despite the pain, the crushing regret, and the enormous chasm of years he had missed, Nathaniel found a genuine, reflexive smile forming on his face. Captain Quack, he is extremely brave, Luna explained seriously. He always protects all the other ducks from the mean geese. As they slowly walked toward the sun-dappled pond, Nathaniel began to catch painful, clear glimpses of Elena's established life in the small, intimate details. The way her hand automatically reached for Luna's near the potential danger of the water's edge, the spare hair tie circling her wrist, the practiced, easy grace with which she navigated the stroller-crowded pathways. This was routine for them, a Saturday ritual meticulously built over years of mornings he had deliberately missed. The pond was a bustling ecosystem of mallards, noisy geese, and the occasional swan gliding with serene dignity across the water's surface. Luna immediately sprinted toward the water's edge, her excitement almost palpable. "Careful, baby," Elena called out gently. "Remember our rule about staying where Mommy can see you clearly." "I know, Mommy," Luna chirped back, yet she dutifully stayed well back from the muddy bank. "She's very well behaved," Nathaniel observed quietly, feeling awkward and intrusive. Elena's smile was soft, radiating maternal pride. "She certainly has her moments, like any kid, but yes, generally she's an angel. She really had to be, frankly. It was just me and her for such a very long time." The sharp reminder of Elena's solitude hit him with visceral force. While he had been ruthlessly building his financial empire and attending costly therapy sessions to manage his complicated feelings about commitment, Elena had been quietly, single-handedly raising their daughter. "Captain Quack! Captain Quack!" Luna's delighted squeal redirected their attention. A large male mallard with an iridescent green head had approached the shore, apparently recognizing his small, regular benefactor. "He remembers me." Luna looked back at both Elena and Nathaniel, her face radiant with pure joy. "See? We're best friends." She began efficiently tossing small pieces of bread into the water with the focused determination of someone performing a highly critical operation. Other ducks quickly joined the ensuing feast, forming a small, agitated flotilla of hopeful birds. "She comes here every Saturday?" Nathaniel asked. "Rain or shine. It started when she was barely toddling. She'd shuffle right to the water's edge and just watch them swim for hours." Elena's voice held the warmth of countless shared memories. One afternoon, an elderly woman offered her some bread crusts, and Luna was hooked forever. She insisted we bring duck food every week after that. Nathaniel watched his daughter. The word still felt beautifully foreign and overwhelming. Distribute bread with the serious concentration of a tiny philanthropist. Every fluid movement she made, every fleeting expression that crossed her face, was a profound revelation. He could clearly see himself in the stubborn, determined set of her jaw when a particularly aggressive goose attempted to steal Captain Quack's hard-won bread. He could see Elena in the gentle, cooing way she spoke to the birds, as if they were capable of understanding every word. "Mr. Nathaniel," Luna suddenly called out, her voice slightly strained. "Come help me. The big goose is being mean." "Mr. Nathaniel." His throat tightened with an unexpected, overwhelming flood of emotion. He immediately knelt beside her, careful not to invade her personal space or disrupt her command center. "What exactly should we do?" he asked seriously, consulting with her as if she were a military strategist. Luna considered this gravely, her brow furrowed. "We need to distract him. Geese like crackers better than bread. Mommy taught me that trick." She handed him a handful of crackers from her bag, her small, cold fingers brushing against his. The brief contact was profoundly electric, the very first time he had knowingly touched his daughter. "You throw them over there," Luna instructed, pointing decisively to a spot several feet away from the main action. "I'll protect Captain Quack's bread." They worked together in seamless tandem, Nathaniel following Luna's lead, as she expertly orchestrated the duck-feeding operation with the tactical precision of a seasoned general. When the aggressive goose was successfully lured away by the enticing crackers, Luna clapped her hands together in sheer triumph. "We did it. We saved Captain Quack. We make a really good team," Nathaniel said, and meant it with an intensity that shocked him. Luna beamed up at him, her face incandescent. "Do you want to be duck friends with me?" The sheer innocence of the question, the easy, total acceptance evident in her voice, nearly brought him to his knees. "I would absolutely love that," he managed. "Good. Next time you can bring the special crackers. Mommy knows where to buy them. Next time." The casual, natural assumption that there would be a next time filled him with overwhelming, terrifying, and exhilarating hope. Hope and terror in equal measure. Elena had been watching their intense, silent interaction with an utterly unreadable expression, her green eyes watchful and deep. When Luna finally ran off, her delighted squeals trailing behind her as she chased a flash of yellow, a butterfly that had briefly landed near the water's edge, Elena moved closer to Nathaniel, her voice dropping to a low, quiet register that made their conversation feel intensely private. "She likes you. I like her, too." The words felt hopelessly inadequate, a tiny vessel attempting to contain the seismic event that had occurred in his soul, the tidal wave of immediate, visceral love and fierce, unexpected protectiveness that had crashed over him in the last hour. "Elena, she's incredible. Truly, you've done an amazing job raising her." "We've done an amazing job," Elena corrected gently, her gaze soft but unwavering. "She might not know it yet, but she possesses your specific kind of tenacity, your precise intelligence, the distinctive way she approaches problem-solving." She trailed off, a delicate sadness touching her mouth as she watched Luna several yards away, completely absorbed, attempting to negotiate a peaceful exchange with a large, territorial swan that wanted the last of her remaining crackers. "Sometimes I see you so clearly in her," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the morning sounds. "Takes my breath away." The confession hung between them, thick with 4 years of unresolved history and regret. Intimate and acutely dangerous. It was the catalyst he needed. "I want to be part of this," Nathaniel said suddenly, the declaration driven by an urgency he couldn't repress. "Not just weekend visits or negotiated holidays. I want to be her father. Really be her father." Elena was quiet for a long, agonizing moment, the silence amplifying the weight of his proposal. Her eyes left Luna and fixed on him. "What about Clarissa? What about your engagement?" The engagement? The word sounded hollow and absurd. He'd barely thought about the impending nuptials since yesterday afternoon. Clarissa had texted twice this morning asking about rescheduling the crucial florist appointment, but he had ignored both messages, unable to reconcile the banality of hydrangeas with the reality of his daughter. "I don't know," he said honestly, the admission feeling like a sudden, profound freedom. "Everything's changed since yesterday." "Mommy, Mr. Nathaniel." "Look." Luna bounded back to them, her small face luminous with wonder and breathless excitement. She had successfully brokered a peace treaty. The large, elegant swan was now eating crackers directly from her outstretched palm, dipping its long neck with surprising gentleness. "Oh my goodness," Elena breathed, quickly pulling out her phone to capture the impossible, tender moment. "Luna, that's incredible. You are so gentle and patient." As Elena focused on taking a flurry of pictures, Nathaniel found himself meticulously memorizing every single detail of this moment, etching it into his permanent memory. The way the bright morning light caught the fine strands of Luna's brown hair, haloing her small head. The sound of her delighted, unguarded laughter. The careful tenderness and absolute trust in her small hands as she fed the regal bird. This was what he had carelessly, stupidly given up 4 years ago. This magic, this profound, uncomplicated love, this organic connection to something pure and real. "I need to tell her who I am," he said quietly to Elena, the words catching in his throat. "Not yet." Elena's response was immediate and firm, cutting through his impulse. "She needs time to get to know you first, to trust you, and you need time to truly understand what being her father actually means." "I understand." "Do you?" Elena's green eyes held a challenge, a subtle fire. "Do you understand that being a parent means showing up even when you're utterly exhausted, even when you'd infinitely rather be somewhere else? It means placing someone else's essential needs before your own every single day without fail. It means midnight fevers and catastrophic tantrums in the middle of crowded grocery stores, and reading the same worn bedtime story 40 times, because that's the ritual she needs to feel fundamentally safe." Each word was both a gentle rebuke for his past failures and a crystal-clear roadmap for the future. "I want to learn," he said simply, meeting her gaze with a sincerity he hadn't known he possessed. Luna bounded back to them, breathless and glowing with triumph. Did you see? The swan likes me. His name is Prince Featherworth. Prince Featherworth, Nathaniel repeated, entirely charmed by the boundless reach of her imagination. All swans are princes, Luna explained seriously, her eyebrows furrowed with importance. It's a rule. Of course it is. Nathaniel found himself grinning widely. What other rules should I know about? Luna immediately launched into an elaborate explanation of proper park etiquette, according to the infallible logic of a 3-year-old. Always say please and thank you to the animals. Never chase the squirrels because they are having important, urgent meetings. And never, ever step on the flowers because they have feelings. As she talked, gesturing animatedly with her small, expressive hands, Nathaniel felt something fundamental shift deep inside him, a tectonic movement. The love wasn't gradual or careful or intellectual. It was immediate, overwhelming, and absolute, like being struck by a beneficent lightning bolt. This was his daughter. This brilliant, fiercely compassionate, imaginative little person was irrevocably his. When it was time to leave the park, Luna surprised him profoundly by reaching for his hand, her movement instinctual and trusting. Will you walk us to the gate, Mr. Nathaniel? Her tiny hand in his was warm and utterly trusting, and Nathaniel had to fiercely blink back tears as they walked together, shoulder to shoulder, a strange, beautiful unit. At the park entrance, Luna looked up at him with those familiar, clear blue eyes. Are you coming to feed the ducks next week? Nathaniel looked at Elena, who nodded almost imperceptibly, a small, tentative movement of acceptance. If that's okay with you and your mommy. It's very okay, Luna declared with finality. Captain Quack will be expecting you. As they parted ways, Nathaniel stood rooted to the spot, watching Elena and Luna disappear into the thick crowd of Saturday morning pedestrians. Luna skipped happily beside her mother, chattering incessantly about Prince Featherworth, the imminent arrival of Captain Quack, and the new friend who had helped save the bread. For the first time in 4 years, Nathaniel felt with crushing certainty that he knew exactly where he belonged. And it had nothing whatsoever to do with sterile penthouse apartments, high society engagement parties, or the perfectly controlled, muted life he'd painstakingly constructed to avoid exactly this kind of beautiful, magnificent chaos. Nathaniel returned to his penthouse apartment with dried duck food, still clinging tenaciously to the sleeve of his expensive Italian jacket, and Luna's delighted, pure laughter echoing unervingly in his ears. The sterile elegance of his apartment, all razor-sharp angles, flawless chrome, and muted, expensive grays, felt like stepping into a cold, desolate museum after spending the morning in a world painted in vibrant primary colors and innocent wonder. Clarissa was waiting in the vast living room, her posture rigid, coiled tight with barely contained fury and impatience. Wedding magazines lay scattered carelessly across the glass coffee table like physical evidence of a recent crime, and her laptop screen displayed a dizzying array of vendor contracts and detailed payment schedules. 3 hours, she said without looking up, her voice clipped and razor-sharp. I've been waiting for 3 hours. Nathaniel automatically loosened his silk tie, the motion habitual, but his thoughts were still hopelessly tangled in the memories of small, warm hands and trust freely given. I told you I needed time to think. Time to think? Clarissa finally raised her eyes, and they were the color and temperature of glacial ice. We have a wedding to plan, Nathaniel. The formal invitations go out next week. The plaza needs final headcount numbers. The florist is already threatening to give our prime slot to someone else. The wedding. The entire thought felt utterly surreal now, like discussing someone else's distant, irrelevant life. How could he possibly stand at an altar and promise a future of forever to Clarissa when his heart was currently residing, quite literally, in a 3-year-old's small pocket alongside fragmented duck crackers and innocent butterfly wishes? Maybe we should postpone. Postpone? Clarissa stood so abruptly that her laptop nearly tumbled violently to the polished marble floor. Nathaniel, what the hell is going on? Yesterday you were perfectly fine, focused and present. Today you're acting like you've never seen a wedding before in your life. He moved instinctively to the professional-grade bar, more for something to do with his suddenly clumsy hands than for any real desire for alcohol. Things have gotten complicated. Uncomplicate them. Her voice carried the sharp, unforgiving precision she used when tearing apart a witness during depositions. Whatever this is about, fix it now. The simple demand rankled him deeply. Fix it. As if Luna's miraculous existence was merely a technical problem to be rapidly solved rather than a miracle to be unconditionally embraced. As if the consuming love coursing through his veins was a temporary system malfunction instead of the most real, essential thing he'd felt in years. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Clarissa moved closer, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor like a chilling countdown. You're having cold feet. It's normal. Pre-wedding anxiety affects 70% of grooms. Pre-wedding anxiety. She was reducing the fundamental earthquake that had shattered his chest into a meaningless statistic. That's not what this is. Then what? Her voice rose slightly in genuine frustration before she expertly caught herself, smoothing back into the controlled, polished tone she wore like armor. Help me understand, because from where I'm standing, my fiancé vanished yesterday, ignored my calls all night, and is now talking about postponing our wedding 3 weeks before the ceremony. Nathaniel set down his untouched glass and turned to face her fully. Clarissa was undeniably beautiful in the way that expensive, highly curated objects are beautiful, perfectly polished, strategically presented, flawlessly designed to impress. But looking at her now, after spending the morning watching Elena's raw, natural grace and Luna's unfiltered, boundless joy, felt like comparing a high-resolution photograph to real, breathing life. The woman at the confectionery yesterday, he said carefully, feeling the floor shift beneath them. We have a history. Something dangerous and deeply instinctive flickered in Clarissa's eyes. A calculated professional assessment. What kind of history? We were together for 2 years. It ended 4 years ago. And the next, simple question carried so much devastating weight that it nearly buckled him. And how could he possibly explain that his entire foundation had been instantaneously shifted? That discovering Luna's existence hadn't just changed his perspective. It had utterly obliterated everything he thought he knew about himself, about reality, about what mattered. She has a daughter. Congratulations to her. Clarissa's voice was arctic, utterly devoid of warmth. What does that have to do with us? The daughter is mine. The words hung in the sterile air like a live wire, humming with destructive potential. Clarissa went instantly still, her face cycling through emotions too rapidly to track. Shock, followed by cold disbelief, then sharp calculation, and finally, a white-hot, consuming rage. Yours. Her voice was barely above a whisper, tight with effort. Yes. Do you have a child? A daughter? And you're just telling me this now? I just found out yesterday. Clarissa laughed. A short, sharp burst of sound that held absolutely no humor. You just found out 3 weeks before our wedding. You discover you're a father, and you thought this was information you could just process quietly on your own time? I needed time. Time? She spun away from him, her perfectly styled, expensive blonde hair swinging like a weapon. Time to what exactly? To figure out if fatherhood conveniently fits into your meticulous schedule? To determine if your secret, inconvenient child conflicts with our highly detailed 5-year plan? The sheer mockery in her voice ignited something hot and fiercely protective in his chest. She's not a secret. Elena tried to tell me when she was pregnant, and I didn't believe her. Elena. Clarissa tested the name, pronouncing it carefully, like it tasted bitter and cheap. How infinitely convenient that she reappears just as we're about to get married. It wasn't convenient. It was coincidence, was it? Clarissa's lawyer instincts were fully engaged now, her eyes sharp and assessing with suspicion. A woman carrying your alleged child shows up at the exact confectionery where we're ordering our engagement cake? That doesn't strike you as meticulously orchestrated? Elena owns the confectionery. She didn't know we'd be there. She owns it. Clarissa processed this information with visible distaste. How delightfully entrepreneurial of her. And now she's ready to cash in on the Nathaniel Rowe fortune. The accusation hit him like a physical slap, stinging his conscience. It's not about money. It's always about money, Nathaniel. especially when billionaires are involved. Clarissa began pacing, her movements sharp, almost predatory. How much does she want for immediate child support? For her silence? For whatever sordid little arrangement she's proposing? She's not asking for anything. His voice was louder than intended, echoing off the stark, unforgiving walls. She's been supporting Luna alone for 3.5 years. She never asked me for a cent, Luna. Clarissa stopped pacing, the child's name freezing on her lips. You already know the child's name. I've met her. You've met her. The words came out flat, hollow, and utterly dangerous. When? This morning. At the park. Clarissa stared at him for a long, terrible moment. Her face completely unreadable, stripped bare of all her usual composure. When she spoke again, her voice was deadly quiet, a controlled whisper of doom. Let me make absolutely sure I understand this correctly. Yesterday, you discovered you have a daughter. Today, instead of discussing this earth-shattering revelation with your fiancé, you went to play daddy in the park. And now you're standing in our home telling me we should postpone our wedding because your ex-girlfriend has conveniently produced a child. She's not convenient. She's my daughter. Allegedly. Definitely. The certainty in his own voice surprised and solidified him. She has my eyes, Clarissa. The same color, the exact same shape. She problem solves exactly like I do. She has this way of tilting her head when she's thinking. Stop. Clarissa held up a hand, her composure finally, irrevocably cracking. Just stop. Do you hear yourself right now? You're describing a child you've known for one single day, like she's the entire center of your universe. Maybe she is. The admission hung between them like a hand grenade with the pin pulled out. Clarissa's face went through a rapid series of micro-expressions. Profound hurt, incandescent rage, cold disbelief, and finally, a terrible, frightening calculation. When she spoke again, her voice was deadly calm, all emotion purged. You're in love with her. With Luna? She's my daughter. With Elena? Clarissa's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. This isn't actually about the child, is it? This is about your unfinished, repressed business with the woman who got away. Nathaniel opened his mouth, ready to issue a fierce, immediate denial. But the words died, strangled in his throat because Clarissa, his sharp, analytical fiancée, wasn't wrong. Seeing Elena again, watching her gentle strength with Luna, remembering the way she used to look at him like he was the sole reason the stars hung in the sky, it had awakened something vital he'd spent 4 years meticulously trying to bury under layers of work and control. I see. Clarissa's voice was soft now, which was somehow infinitely more terrifying than her loudest anger. Well, this is certainly illuminating. She moved to the glass coffee table and began gathering the expensive wedding magazines with precise, almost violent movements, stacking them neatly. Clarissa, no. She didn't look at him. You don't get to speak right now. You don't get to explain or rationalize or try to make this okay. You just told me that you're in love with another woman 3 weeks before our wedding. A woman who conveniently has your child. I didn't say I was in love with her. You didn't have to. Clarissa stood, the wedding magazines clutched to her chest like a protective shield of armor. Your face said it all. The way you talked about the child, about Elena, about your idyllic morning in the park. You were glowing, Nathaniel. Glowing in a way you never, ever have when you talk about me. The observation hit him like a physical blow because, in the brutal clarity of that moment, it was absolutely true. When had he ever felt about Clarissa the consuming urgency he'd felt watching Luna feed the ducks? When had his heart raced at the thought of seeing Clarissa the way it was racing now simply at the memory of Elena's faint, knowing smile? I think, Clarissa said with dangerous quiet, that this conversation is over. What does that mean? She looked at him with an expression reserved for a particularly slow, disappointing student. It means, my dear almost husband, that you need to figure out what you actually want, because you can't have both. You can't have your perfect little family unit with Elena and Luna and also have the life we've built together. Clarissa, please choose. The word was sharp and final. Because I won't be anyone's second choice, and I certainly won't play stepmother to the child of the woman you actually love. She moved toward the door of the penthouse, then paused briefly without turning around. The engagement ring is on the kitchen counter. I'll have my personal things collected while you're at work on Monday. My lawyer will be in touch about the joint assets. You're ending our engagement. Clarissa finally turned back to him, and her smile was cold and beautiful and terrible in its finality. No, darling. You ended it the moment you chose to meet your daughter instead of planning your wedding. I'm just acknowledging reality. The door closed behind her with a soft, expensive click that somehow sounded precisely like the end of the world. Nathaniel stood utterly alone in his pristine, silent apartment, surrounded by the sudden, profound wreckage of a life that had instantly revealed itself to be built entirely on sand. The enormous engagement ring caught the afternoon light from where it lay on the marble kitchen counter. A small, blindingly expensive symbol of promises he'd apparently never truly meant to keep. His phone buzzed softly. A text from Elena. Luna wanted me to tell you that Captain Quack misses you already. Same time next Saturday? Nathaniel looked at the simple message, then at the desolate ring, then at his hollow reflection in the darkened window overlooking the entire city. For the first time in 4 years, he could see himself clearly, without the distorting filter of expectation and ambition. He typed back, his hands steady, the choice already made. I'll be there. With extra crackers for Prince Featherworth. The response came immediately. He'll be honored. Luna's already planning his royal menu. Nathaniel found himself smiling genuinely despite the absolute devastation surrounding him. Clarissa was right about one thing. He had chosen. He'd chosen the moment Luna's tiny, warm hand slipped into his. He'd chosen when Elena's green eyes met his across the chaos of the confectionery. He'd chosen fierce love over safe predictability, beautiful chaos over meticulous control, profound truth over convenient illusion. And for the first time since he'd built this gilded cage around his life, he felt like he could finally completely breathe. Monday morning arrived like a silent, inescapable reckoning. Nathaniel sat in his corner office high on the 42nd floor of the Meridian Tower, staring blankly at complex contracts that might as well have been written in ancient Sanskrit. The numbers blurred together into meaningless symbols on the page, while his mind obsessively replayed Saturday's park magic and Sunday's total destruction on an endless, exhausting loop. His assistant, Margaret, a woman of legendary efficiency, had been tiptoeing cautiously around him all morning, her usual brisk demeanor dampened by his obvious, heavy distraction. The engagement announcement that had run in the Times business section 3 weeks ago. A photo of him and Clarissa at the Met Gala, both wearing the kind of practiced, empty smiles that looked flawless in print but had never quite reached their eyes, was still framed prominently on his desk. He reached out and, with slow deliberation, turned the frame face down. His phone buzzed quietly. A text from Elena. Luna drew you a picture of Captain Quack. She wants to show you next Saturday. Is that still okay? The message was followed by an attached photo that made his chest constrict instantly with emotion. A child's drawing in vibrant, messy crayon showed a simple stick figure with scribbled brown hair standing next to a vividly green, slightly lopsided duck. Above them, Luna had carefully written in wobbly, triumphant letters. Asterisk Mr. Nathan L. and Captain Quack. Asterisk the sweet misspelling made him smile despite the deep ache in his chest. His daughter had drawn him, had thought about him enough to put crayon to paper and create something just for his eyes. He was in the middle of typing a response when his office door burst open violently. Sir. Margaret's voice was high with genuine concern. I'm sorry. I truly tried to stop her. But Clarissa strode past Margaret like she owned the building, which, Nathaniel supposed, she partially did through their intricate joint investments. She was immaculate as always, clad in a crisp charcoal suit that likely cost more than most people's annual cars. Her perfect blonde hair was swept back into a shiny chignon that looked effortless but had likely taken an hour to perfect. It's fine, Margaret. Thank you. Nathaniel's voice was steady, professional, masking the turmoil beneath. Margaret hesitated at the doorway, clearly sensing the powerful, dangerous undercurrents in the room, but eventually withdrew, closing the heavy door behind her. Clarissa moved immediately to the expansive windows overlooking Central Park, her posture rigid with controlled, burning fury. You look like hell. Good morning to you too. Don't. She turned, and her eyes were bright, surprisingly bright, with unshed tears that somehow made her look infinitely more dangerous, not more vulnerable. Don't you dare try to be charming right now. Nathaniel leaned back slowly in his leather chair, studying the woman he'd planned to marry just 3 weeks from now. Even in her furious anger, she was beautiful. Even in her raw pain, she was formidably composed. But looking at her now, he felt nothing but a dull, pervasive sadness for what they'd both lost, and overwhelming relief that they'd lost it before it was far too late. The Post wants a comment, Clarissa said without preamble, launching straight into business, about why the Vonroe engagement has been called off 3 weeks before the wedding. Nathaniel's stomach dropped instantly. How did they find out? Vendors talk. Nathaniel. The plaza, the florist, the caterer. They all want to know why suddenly no one is returning their urgent calls. And Stephanie Morrison saw me leaving here Saturday night with my overnight bag. She's already called 3 of my closest friends wanting the real story. The Manhattan social scene was infinitely smaller than most people realized, and gossip traveled faster than insider stock tips. By now, half the Upper East Side would be excitedly speculating about what profound moral failure had destroyed the golden couple's fairy tale. What did you tell them? Clarissa's laugh was brittle, breaking like thin ice. What could I tell them? That my fiancé discovered he's a father 3 weeks before our wedding. That he's been playing house in Central Park with his ex-girlfriend while I meticulously planned our future? Each word was surgically precise, designed to cut deep. But beneath the anger, Nathaniel heard something else. Something raw and unfamiliar. Hurt. Real, unprocessed hurt that tightened his chest with genuine guilt. Clarissa, I loved you. The words came out quietly, almost conversationally, which made them somehow more honest and devastating. Did you know that? I actually loved you. Not the idea of you. Not your money or your status or what marrying you would meticulously do for my career. Asterisk you. Asterisk the admission hit him with the force of a physical blow. He had always told himself that their relationship was simply one of mutual, comfortable convenience. That they were both getting exactly what they needed without the messy, unpredictable complications of deep, consuming emotion. He'd never seriously considered that Clarissa might have felt more than she'd ever shown. I loved you too, he said quietly, and he meant it. Not the all-consuming, desperate, elemental love he now felt for Elena and Luna, but something real nonetheless. No. Clarissa shook her head sharply, her composure finally, completely cracking. You loved the idea of me. You loved how perfectly I fit into your life. How I never demanded more than you were willing to give. How I never made you feel things you weren't comfortable feeling or organizing. She was right, and they both knew it. Elena makes you uncomfortable, doesn't she? Clarissa continued, moving closer to his desk, her hands gripping the edge. She makes you feel things you can't possibly control, can't neatly organize into those little compartments you rely on. That's why you ran from her 4 years ago, and that, Nathaniel, is precisely why you're running toward her now. I'm not running. Aren't you? Clarissa placed her hands firmly on his desk, leaning forward, her breath ragged. You've thrown away our entire relationship for a woman who did not trust you enough to convince you that you were a father, a woman who successfully kept your child from you for 3.5 years. The accusation stung with the sharp finality of absolute truth, because it confirmed the corrosive suspicion that had been eating at him since he saw Luna's face last Saturday. Elena had tried to tell him yes, he remembered, but when he'd reacted with fear and rage, she had vanished completely. There were no second attempts, no subsequent phone calls, no demand for DNA tests, no legal action filed. Just silence. He had been telling himself and Clarissa that she was protecting Luna from a hostile father. But the words felt brittle and hollow, even as he spoke them. Was she truly protecting the child? Or was she, perhaps, protecting herself from him? Clarissa straightened with clinical efficiency, smoothing down the impeccable silk of her navy jacket. Have you asked yourself the critical questions, Nathaniel? Why she never tried again? Why she never sent a single letter, even an anonymous one? Never had a lawyer contact you, never took any of the steps a woman typically must take when the father of her child refuses to acknowledge paternity? Nathaniel hadn't consciously asked himself those questions, preferring to dwell in the softer territory of guilt. But the questions were demanding answers now, echoing in the cavernous space of his self-doubt. Elena was smart, capable, and aggressively determined when she wanted to be. If she genuinely wanted him to know about Luna, couldn't the resourceful Elena he knew have found an undeniable way? Maybe she was angry, he offered weakly, grasping for a rational excuse. Maybe she was relieved, Clarissa countered, her voice dropping to a soft, almost pitying register. Maybe having a demanding billionaire baby daddy was simply inconvenient for the kind of quiet, uncomplicated life she wanted to build. Maybe she found it easier, happier even, to play the martyr, the single mother who conquered it all on her own terms. That's not. He cut himself off because, humiliatingly, he didn't actually know what private calculations Elena had made. He had filled in the vast, 4-year gap with the convenient currency of assumptions and self-flagellation. But he had never genuinely asked her why she had surrendered her claim so easily. You don't know, do you? Clarissa read the landscape of his conflicted face with the precise, unflinching skill that had made her one of Manhattan's most feared litigators. You've built this elaborate, romantic narrative about the woman who got away, about the love story you unfairly lost, but you don't actually know the woman standing in front of you anymore. You don't know who she's become, what she truly wants, or what drives her motivations. The words didn't sting. They hit their mark with the devastating force of a wrecking ball because they were undeniably true. The Elena he had fallen in love with 4 years ago had been passionate, quick-tempered, impulsively generous, and sometimes recklessly honest. The woman he had seen at the confectionery, however, had been measured, controlled, careful, and deeply guarded. People changed. Circumstances changed them fundamentally. The child is sweet, Clarissa continued, her voice gentling slightly, a sliver of genuine warmth appearing. From what little I could see, she's utterly lovely. But Nathaniel, you cannot build a life or a relationship with Elena based purely on guilt and hazy nostalgia. And you absolutely cannot assume that she wants you back just because you've suddenly decided, 4 years late, that you want her. His phone buzzed again, vibrating against the polished mahogany desk. Another text from Elena. No pressure about Saturday. I know this is all overwhelming. We can take things as slowly as you need. The message was kind, remarkably understanding, and entirely at odds with the firebrand who used to send him demanding texts asking why he was working late again. This new Elena was patient where the old one had been demanding, accommodating where she'd once been fiercely confrontational. Had she changed that much, fundamentally reshaping her character, or had she simply learned, through necessity, to hide her real feelings better? I have to go, Clarissa said, gathering her elegant purse and slinging the strap over her shoulder. The movers will be here this afternoon for the rest of my things. Clarissa, wait. Nathaniel stood abruptly, moving around the desk, the distance between them suddenly too vast. I'm sorry for all of this. You deserved so much better than the way I handled everything. She studied his face for a long, quiet moment, her expression heavy with a sadness that wasn't unkind, merely exhausted. Yes, I did. But you know what, Nathaniel? So did you. We both deserved someone who looked at us the way you look when you talk about that little girl. At the door, she paused, her hand resting on the smooth brass handle. For what it's worth, I truly hope you figure out what you really want before you destroy something else valuable, because that child does not deserve to be caught in the middle of whatever unfinished, toxic business you have with her mother. After Clarissa left, the silence of the massive office settled in like dust. Nathaniel sat alone, the only thing of color or life being Luna's drawing. The stick figure version of himself looked impossibly happy. Arms spread wide, smile crooked, but undeniably genuine. This was how his daughter saw him. Someone worth drawing, someone worth missing, someone worth including in her crayon-colored world of friendly ducks, valiant princes, and butterfly wishes. But Clarissa's final, cutting words echoed in his sophisticated cage. What did Elena really want? What did she see when she looked at him now, for years after the detonation? And most importantly, Was he chasing a phantom, a ghost of the passionate connection they'd once shared? Or was he genuinely attempting to build something real and new? He picked up his phone. Instead of texting back about Saturday, he typed something else, something much riskier. Can we talk? Just you and me without Luna. There are things I need to understand that can't wait. The response came quickly, efficiently, and without unnecessary emotion. Of course. Coffee tomorrow morning. There's a place called Brew and Bean on Columbus. 8 a.m. I'll be there. As Nathaniel turned back to his contracts, the dense legal jargon on the page seemed clearer somehow. Not because the numbers suddenly made more sense, but because for the first time in 4 years, he was actively ready to face the truth, whatever bitter form it might take. He was ready to risk destroying the entire fairy tale he'd been telling himself about second chances and a guaranteed happily ever after. Especially then. Brew and Bean occupied its corner of Columbus Avenue like a warm, intentional embrace. Its brick walls were lined with vibrant local artwork, and the mismatched wooden furniture somehow created an atmosphere of perfect, comforting harmony. Nathaniel arrived a calculated 15 minutes early, choosing a small table in the back corner where they might speak without being overheard. His hands were wrapped tightly around a black coffee he didn't want, more for the ritual of having something to do than any genuine need for caffeine. When Elena walked through the door at exactly 8 o'clock, his breath hitched in his chest, the involuntary reaction hitting him just as powerfully as it had 4 years prior. She wore simple jeans and a soft, cream-colored sweater. Her rich auburn hair was loose around her shoulders. Without Luna beside her, without the recognizable protective armor of motherhood, she looked both heartbreakingly younger, more like the vibrant woman he'd fallen in love with, and yet, paradoxically, more like a complete stranger than ever before. "Thank you for meeting me," he managed, his voice sounding slightly rough as she approached the table. Elena nodded once, sliding efficiently into the chair across from him. "Luna's with my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. She babysits sometimes when I have early supplier meetings." The explanation was delivered casually, almost too casually, and Nathaniel instantly caught the underlying message. This is a business meeting. This is not about us. Can I get you a coffee? He offered, half rising from his chair. I'll go order it. Elena stood quickly, putting an immediate physical distance between them. I know what I like here. As she moved toward the counter, Nathaniel watched her interact with the barista. A relaxed, easy familiarity that spoke of established routine, of a complicated, independent life built in small, consistent moments he had never been part of. This was Elena's world now, carved out in warm, authentic corners of Manhattan he had spent 4 years ignoring. She returned seconds later with what looked like an elaborate, frothy latte, settling back into her chair with careful, practiced precision. Everything about her movements was measured, controlled, and economical. Where was the woman who used to gesture wildly when she told a funny story? Who used to steal French fries off his plate and argue passionately about obscure French New Wave movies he'd never heard of? You said you needed to understand something, Elena prompted gently, folding her hands neatly on the table. Nathaniel set down his untouched coffee, meeting her green eyes directly. Why didn't you try again? I'm sorry. After that night when I reacted so badly to the pregnancy news, you tried once. I was an ass, and then there was nothing. For 3.5 years, nothing. Why? Elena's fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around her mug, yet her expression remained carefully neutral. What would have been the point, Nathaniel? The point would have been that I had a daughter, that maybe once I calmed down, once I had time to process the shock, I might have reacted differently. Might have. Elena's small smile was sad and bitterly knowing. But you didn't calm down, did you? You didn't process. You got engaged to Clarissa 6 months later. The observation hit him with the physical force of a slap. He had forgotten how quickly he had moved on, or at least appeared to move on publicly. Just 6 short months after their devastating breakup, 6 months after he had rejected Elena's terrifying pregnancy announcement, he had been photographed smiling at high-profile charity events with Clarissa, looking every inch the successful, composed bachelor who had neatly moved past his complicated, messy relationship. That wasn't about forgetting you, he said quietly, choosing his words carefully. wasn't it? Elena's voice was gentle, but her eyes were needle-sharp. Nathaniel, you looked me in the eye and told me I was lying about being pregnant. You told me to get out of your life, and then you immediately started dating a woman who was everything I wasn't. Blonde, polished, perfectly suited to your world. What exactly was I supposed to think? You were supposed to fight for us. For Luna. The words came out harsher than intended, raw with his own confusion and guilt, and Elena flinched slightly, pulling back emotionally. Fight? She set down her mug with deliberate care. Fight how? Take the father of my child to court? Demand a legally enforced DNA test? Force you to be a father when you had made it undeniably clear you didn't want to be? Yes, maybe. I don't know. Nathaniel ran a frustrated hand through his meticulously styled hair, frustrated with himself, with her, with the entire crushing situation. But something, anything other than just disappearing. Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring down into the dark surface of her coffee. When she finally looked up, her eyes held a genuine, profound pain so deep it momentarily stole his breath. You want to know why I didn't fight? Yes. Because I was 8 months pregnant, Nathaniel. 8 months. I was enormous, volatile, terrified, and completely alone. And the man I loved, the man whose child I was carrying, looked me in the eye and told me I was lying to manipulate him. Her voice remained steady, yet Nathaniel could hear the fine, controlled tremor underneath. I didn't just lose you that night, Elena continued. I lost my faith in my own judgment. I had spent 2 years believing we had something real, something worth fighting for. In one conversation, you made me question everything I thought I knew about us, and about myself. Elena, I'm not finished. Her tone was firm, yet not unkind. You asked why I didn't try again. Here is the true reason. Because you broke my heart so completely that I couldn't afford to risk it happening again. Because I had a baby coming who was going to need me to be strong and whole. And I couldn't afford to fall apart chasing after a man who clearly didn't want me, or her. Each word was a knife slicing precisely into his chest, devastatingly accurate. So I made a choice. Elena leaned forward slightly. I chose Luna. I chose to build a life where she would be loved unconditionally, where she wouldn't have to spend a single moment wondering if her father wanted her, where she wouldn't grow up feeling like she was a burden or a mistake. She's not a mistake. I know that now, but for 3.5 years I wasn't sure you did. The accusation hung between them like a taut, live electrical wire. Nathaniel wanted to deny it vehemently, but how could he? His actions, his public indifference, had spoken louder than any subsequent, whispered words of apology. I was scared, he said finally, the admission tasting like ash. So was I. Elena's voice softened slightly, an echo of shared humanity. But I didn't have the luxury of running away from my fear. I had to face it every day for 9 months. And then every day after that, when I looked at Luna's face and saw yours looking back at me. She really looks like me. Devastatingly so. Elena's smile was fragile, yet genuine. Especially when she's being stubborn. She gets this little crease between her eyebrows, just like you used to when you were intently working through a complex problem. The image of Luna wearing his signature expression made his chest tighten painfully with longing and profound regret. Can I ask you something now? Elena said, pulling back to a place of composure. Anything. What do you want from this, from us, from the situation? Because I need to know if you're here because you genuinely, deeply want to be Luna's father, or if you're only here because you're feeling guilty about missing 3.5 years of her life. The question was fair and brutal in its directness. Both, Nathaniel admitted, giving up the pretense of noble motivation. I want to be her father. I want to know everything about her. What makes her laugh? What are her deepest fears? How she takes her cereal in the morning. But yes, I also feel guilty. Devastatingly, overwhelmingly guilty. Guilt isn't enough, Elena said quietly, her eyes unwavering. Luna doesn't need a father who shows up out of obligation. She needs someone who chooses her every day, even when it's hard, even when it's inconvenient, even when she's 3 years old and having a meltdown in Target because I won't buy her a cheap plastic toy. I want to choose her every day, he insisted, the desperation entering his voice. Even if it means disrupting your life, your career, your perfectly organized schedule. My engagement is over. Elena's eyes widened slightly, the first true flicker of shock he'd seen. What? Clarissa and I. It's done. She ended it Saturday night after I told her about Luna. Nathaniel. Elena's voice was soft with what sounded like sincere regret. I'm sorry. I never meant for. Don't apologize. He leaned forward, needing her to understand the internal shift. It wasn't about you. Not directly. It was about me finally admitting that I was marrying the wrong woman for all the wrong reasons. And what were the right reasons? The question caught him entirely off guard. I don't know. Love, I suppose. Real, terrifying love, not just comfortable compatibility. And you think you love me? Elena's voice was carefully neutral, guarding herself fiercely. I think I never stopped loving you, Nathaniel said quietly, the confession heavy in the air. I think I spent 4 years successfully trying to convince myself I had. But seeing you again, Elena, you're all I can think about. You and Luna. Don't. Elena shook her head quickly, her composure finally cracking slightly. Don't do that. Do what? Don't confuse your powerful feelings for Luna with your complicated feelings for me. Don't let guilt and regret confuse you into thinking you want something you don't actually want. How do you know what I want? Because I know you, Nathaniel. Elena's voice was quiet but resolute. You want to fix this. You want to make everything okay again. You want to make up for lost time and prove that you're not the man who walked away. But Nathaniel, you can't love me back to 4 years ago. That version of us does not exist anymore. Then let's create a new version. Elena stared at him for a long, agonizing moment, her deep green eyes searching the depths of his face for deception. You don't even know me anymore. The woman you think you love? She's gone. I'm not the same person I was before Luna. Then let me get to know who you are now. Why? The question was painfully simple but loaded with history. Because you feel obligated? Because it would be convenient for Luna to have her parents together? Because you're confusing deep nostalgia with actual present emotion? Because I want to, he said simply, throwing off the layers of complication. Because sitting here with you, even having this excruciatingly difficult conversation, feels more intensely real than anything I've experienced in 4 years of careful planning. Elena's laugh was soft and sad, edged with resignation. You left your fiancé for a memory, Nathaniel. What happens when the reality doesn't live up to the pristine monument you've built up in your head? What happens if it does? The question hung between them, dangerous and brimming with terrifying possibility. Elena finished her elaborate coffee in one long swallow, then stood, signaling the end. I need to get back to Luna. Elena, you can see her this Saturday at the park, just like we planned. But Nathaniel, she paused, looking down at him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. A blend of sadness and fierce protection. Figure out what you really want before you make any promises you might not be able to keep, because she's already drawn you into her world. And if you break her small heart, you will destroy something beautiful and innocent that can never be repaired. And what about your heart? He asked quietly. Elena's smile was heartbreaking in its profound sadness. My heart learned how to heal itself once, Nathaniel. But Luna's heart? Luna's has never been broken. Let's keep it that way. She walked toward the door, then turned back, holding his gaze. Oh, and Nathaniel, when you see her Saturday, ask her about her favorite color. It changes every week, but she has very strong opinions about why each one is the best. After she left, Nathaniel sat alone in the warmly lit coffee shop, surrounded by the gentle hum of morning conversations and the comforting smell of fresh pastry. Elena was right. He didn't know her anymore. The spontaneous woman he'd fallen in love with 4 years ago had been replaced by someone stronger, more careful, and infinitely more guarded. But maybe that wasn't a tragedy. Maybe the woman she had become was worth the monumental effort of getting to know all over again. Even if it meant starting completely from scratch, even if it meant proving he was worthy of a second chance he deeply suspected he didn't deserve. Saturday morning painted Riverside Park in shades of golden amber, the depth of autumn asserting itself with the kind of crisp, breathtaking beauty that made even the most cynical New Yorkers pause to appreciate the world around them. Nathaniel arrived at the pond with a bag full of premium duck feeders and a stomach full of nervous adrenaline that had nothing to do with anxiety medication and everything to do with the little girl whose fleeting favorite color he was about to discover. Luna spotted him first, breaking away from Elena's side with the fearless, joyful enthusiasm of unburdened childhood. She wore bright purple leggings and a sunshine yellow sweater that somehow managed to coordinate perfectly with the tiny sneakers that lit up with tiny flashes when she ran. "Mr. Nathaniel! Mr. Nathaniel!" Her voice carried across the morning air like pure music. "I brought you something." She skidded to a stop right in front of him, slightly breathless, clutching a folded piece of construction paper to her chest like it was the most precious treasure in the world. "You did?" Nathaniel crouched down to her eye level, struck again by how perfectly her crystalline blue eyes mirrored his own. "What is it?" "Close your eyes," Luna commanded, using the imperious authority of someone accustomed to having her wishes obeyed without question. Nathaniel glanced up at Elena, who had approached more slowly, a small, knowing smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She was wearing jeans and a forest green jacket that brought out the startling color of her eyes, looking more relaxed than she had been at the coffee shop. "She's been working on this all week," Elena said softly. "Close your eyes, Nathaniel. Trust her." He obeyed, closing his eyes, and immediately felt small, tentative fingers pressing the warm paper into his hands. "Okay, open." Nathaniel opened his eyes and looked down at what might have been the most beautiful, significant piece of art he had ever encountered. Luna had drawn them together again, but this time the stick figures were more elaborate. There was Captain Quack, still proudly green and large, and Prince Featherworth in elegant white plumage. But beside them stood three clearly discernible figures holding hands. A tall one with brown hair, a medium one with red hair, and a small one with dark hair and what appeared to be a yellow sweater. At the top, in careful, painstaking preschool lettering, Luna had written, "My family at the park." The words hit him like a lightning strike, shocking him to his core. Family. She had drawn them as a family. "Do you like it?" Luna asked anxiously, suddenly uncertain in the face of his stunned, speechless reaction. "Luna?" Nathaniel's voice was rough with unexpected emotion, catching in his throat. "This is the most beautiful picture I have ever seen in my life." Her face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? Mommy helped me spell family, but I did all the drawing myself. You are an incredible artist." He studied the picture more carefully, noticing small details that made his chest ache with tenderness. "Is that your yellow sweater?" "Ah, it's my favorite yellow this week. Yellow is my favorite color because it's happy and sunshine and duck feet and corn on the cob and Luna." She giggled at her own clever joke. "Luna means moon, but I like yellow better than white." Elena laughed, and the sound was like hearing a cherished song he'd completely forgotten he loved. "Last week it was purple because it was royal and mysterious and tasted like grape popsicles." "And next week?" Nathaniel asked Luna seriously, keeping her gaze. "Maybe orange," Luna mused, tilting her head in a gesture that was purely his. "Or maybe green like Captain Quack. Or maybe blue like—" She stopped, studying his face with a sudden, intense seriousness. "Like your eyes and my eyes. We have the same eyes, don't we, Mr. Nathaniel?" The observation was innocent, yet loaded with overwhelming biological possibility. Nathaniel glanced at Elena, who nodded almost imperceptibly, granting him permission to answer truthfully. "We do have the same eyes," he said carefully, returning her gaze. "What do you think that means?" "Maybe it means we're supposed to be friends. Special friends who see things the same way." "I'd like that very much," Nathaniel said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. "Come on." Luna grabbed his hand with the easy, immediate familiarity of a child. "Captain Quack is waiting, and I brought extra special crackers for Prince Featherworth because royalty needs proper food." As they walked toward the pond, Nathaniel felt Luna's small, trusting hand in his much larger one and experienced something he'd never known existed. A kind of love so fierce and instantly protective it was almost frightening in its intensity. This was what fathers felt, he realized. This overwhelming, consuming need to keep her safe, to ensure she was happy, to somehow become worthy of her unquestioning trust. "She's been talking about you all week," Elena said quietly, falling into step beside them. "Every day she asks if it's Saturday yet, if you're coming to see Captain Quack, and if you remembered the royal crackers." "Did you tell her about coffee?" Nathaniel asked, keeping his voice low, their conversation hidden from Luna's bright focus. "I told her we had grown-up things to discuss. She suggested we could discuss them while feeding the ducks next time because ducks are excellent listeners and they don't interrupt," offering the most discreet confidence a city could offer. Despite everything, the simmering tension, the lingering uncertainty, the complicated, painful mess of their shared past, Nathaniel found himself letting out a full, genuine laugh. "She's wise," he managed to say. "She's 3.5, Elena corrected gently, though her tone was deeply fond. "She just hasn't learned that the world is complicated yet, which I suppose is a good thing." Down by the pond, Luna immediately launched into what appeared to be a meticulously well-rehearsed routine. She greeted Captain Quack by name, a majestic mallard, and introduced Nathaniel to several other waterfowl she had apparently befriended over the weeks, each with their own distinct personality and court title. She began distributing the duck food with the focused, solemn attention of a diplomat hosting an international peace summit. "That one's Duchess Paddlefoot," she informed Nathaniel, pointing to a modest brown duck with distinctive, almost regal white markings near her neck. "She's very fancy, but also very hungry. And that one," she gestured toward a nervous pintail, "is Sir Splashington. He's Prince Featherworth's best friend." Nathaniel found himself utterly absorbed in Luna's elaborate, cohesive mythology. He asked follow-up questions about duck politics, current royal hierarchical tensions, and feeding schedules with the absolute seriousness her world deserved. He realized he was learning more about true diplomacy and power structures here than in any corporate boardroom. The equilibrium was threatened when a particularly large, aggressive Canada goose, clearly a known disruptive element, tried to steal food from the smaller, less defended ducks. Luna, ever the efficient monarch, appointed Nathaniel as head of goose management and security, a title he accepted with appropriate, profound gravity. "You're good at this?" Elena observed, watching him successfully negotiate a tense border dispute by strategically deploying a handful of seed far away from the main feeding area. "At what, exactly?" "Being present." Following her lead, Elena specified, leaning back against a park bench. "A lot of adults try to impose their own framework and ideas on kids, believing they know best. But you're genuinely letting her teach you how the world works." The compliment, stripped of business metrics or financial success, resonated deeper within him than any multi-million-dollar deal he had ever closed. "She's an excellent teacher," Nathaniel said, his eyes on Luna, who was now attempting to have a highly serious conversation with Prince Featherworth, a stately swan, about proper swimming techniques and etiquette. "Where did she learn to be so confident, so sure of herself?" Elena's smile was soft, radiating deep maternal pride. "She had to be. It was just me and her for so long, and I was learning everything as I went. I relied on her innocence, and she became my little partner in figuring everything out, from recipes to rent payments." "That must have been incredibly hard on both of you," Nathaniel stated, realizing the immense weight of the years she had carried. "Some days, yes." Elena's honesty was stark, surprising him again. "Some days I felt like I was failing at everything simultaneously. But Luna, she made me want to be better, stronger. She made me believe I could actually handle anything." "You did handle everything," Nathaniel emphasized, gesturing toward Luna, who was now attempting to teach the bemused swan the proper way to curtsy. "Look at her. She's incredible, Elena. Happy, confident, creative, kind. You did that." "We did that," Elena corrected quietly, her voice barely a whisper. "She has your problem-solving skills, that intensity you get when you're focused on something. She has your way of tilting her head when she's thinking, that slight, analytical tilt of the head, a gesture I knew intimately from late-night study sessions 4 years ago." Elena paused, her gaze softening. And she has your kindness, your wild imagination. The way you used to make up elaborate backstories about strangers we saw waiting for the subway. Elena looked at him sharply, surprise blooming in her eyes. You remember that? I remember everything about us, Nathaniel said quietly, the statement ringing with the weight of 4 years of suppressed memory and regret. Even the things I tried desperately to forget. Their fragile intimacy was interrupted by Luna's delighted squeal. Prince Featherworth had apparently mastered the curtsy to her immense satisfaction, and she was clapping her hands in celebratory applause. Mr. Nathaniel, Mommy, did you see? She yelled across the water. Prince Featherworth said, Thank you for the royal crackers. I saw, Nathaniel called back, then lowered his voice to Elena. Are all swans this polite in New York? Or is Prince Featherworth truly special? According to Luna, he's the most well-mannered swan in the entire 5 boroughs. Elena replied seriously, maintaining the facade of Luna's reality. Last week, she wrote him a thank you note for being such a good friend. I had to help her mail it to Prince Featherworth, the Big Pond, Central Park. You mailed it? Nathaniel asked, momentarily stunned by the dedication. Of course I mailed it, she said, shrugging off the absurdity. When your daughter writes her first official letter, you mail it, even if the recipient is a waterfowl of noble standing. That single, unadorned statement, the instantaneous guide to true parenting, made his chest tighten with overwhelming emotion. The casual, proprietary way Elena said your daughter made the distant possibility of a future feel intensely, breathtakingly real. For a moment it felt almost normal, like they were just parents, sharing stories about their child's imagination and innocent belief system. Mommy! Luna bounded over to them, her cheeks flushed scarlet with triumphant excitement. Can we show Mr. Nathaniel the secret place now? Elena hesitated, a flicker of protective reserve crossing her face. Sweetheart, I'm not sure. It's supposed to be our secret. Please, Luna insisted, grabbing Nathaniel's hand fiercely. He's part of our park family now. He should know about all our special places. Nathaniel looked at Elena, raising an eyebrow in silent question, but she was already sighing in affectionate defeat. The secret place, she explained, is Luna's absolute favorite spot in the park. She discovered it a few months ago, and it's become, well, you'll see. Luna grabbed both their hands, positioning herself precisely between them, a small, authoritative navigator, and began leading them away from the pond. Close your eyes again, she commanded firmly. It's not secret if you see how to get there. Nathaniel found himself walking blind, a strange exercise in trust, guided by a 3-year-old and the woman he'd never stopped loving, through paths he couldn't see toward a destination he couldn't possibly imagine. Luna chattered the entire way, providing a running commentary on obstacles and progress. Step up here, Mr. Nathaniel. There's a big route. We're almost there. It's going to be so magical. When she finally told them to open their eyes, Nathaniel found himself standing in a small, hidden grove tucked far away from the main pedestrian paths. It was a true sanctuary, where someone had clearly been gardening unofficially and with great love. Wildflowers bloomed in careful abundance, and a fallen, moss-covered log had been positioned perfectly for sitting and watching the world go by through the natural frame of the trees. This is it, Luna announced proudly, sweeping her hand across the vista. This is where I come to think about important things, and where Mommy brings her sketchbook sometimes, and where we have picnics when it's too crowded by the pond. It was private, overwhelmingly peaceful, and completely magical in the way only an unburdened child could truly recognize and claim. Luna, Nathaniel said seriously, kneeling down to meet her eye level. Thank you for sharing your secret place with me. That means a lot. You're welcome, she replied simply. Now, you can come here when you need to think about important things, too. What important things do you think about, Mr. Nathaniel? The question was innocent, yet it was delivered without artifice, cutting straight through the layers of his corporate shield right to the heart of everything he was struggling with. Lately, he said honestly, rising slowly, I think about how to be the kind of person who deserves to be in beautiful, peaceful places like this. Luna nodded sagely, as if this weighty existential crisis made perfect sense. "That's easy," she declared. "You just have to be kind to ducks and swans and say please and thank you and share your crackers. Is that all?" he asked, feeling a strange lightness from her simple prescription. "And you have to be nice to people's feelings," Luna added seriously, walking right up to him. "Especially mommies. Mommies have very important feelings." Nathaniel glanced at Elena, who was looking determinedly at a patch of bluebells, a faint, telltale blush coloring her cheeks. "You're absolutely right," Nathaniel said to Luna, making sure his voice carried a deep sincerity that included Elena. "Mommies do have very important feelings. The most important," Luna agreed solemnly, crossing her arms. "That's why I always give Mommy extra hugs when she looks sad." "When does Mommy look sad?" Nathaniel asked gently, his focus returning entirely to Elena. Luna considered this carefully, tipping her head. "Sometimes at night, when she thinks I'm sleeping, I hear her sigh. Very big sighs. And sometimes when we walk past the fancy cake shops, she gets that faraway look. But mostly she's happy, especially when we're here in our secret place." Elena cleared her throat loudly, breaking the emotional tension. "I think we should head back. Someone has a lunch date with Mrs. Patterson, and she's making grilled cheese with the good cheese." Luna's attention immediately shifted to more pressing, culinary matters. "With the very good cheese?" As they walked back toward the park entrance, Luna skipped ahead, energized by the prospect of cheese, leaving Nathaniel and Elena to walk together in a quiet, comfortable silence that felt both new and familiar. "Thank you," Nathaniel said quietly. "For what?" "For letting me into this. Into her world. Into whatever this complicated thing is we're trying to build." Elena was quiet for a long moment, watching Luna's distant silhouette. "She likes you. She really, truly likes you. And that terrifies me." "Why?" "Because if you decide this is too hard, if you decide you don't actually want to be a father, if you disappear again." Elena stopped walking entirely, turning to face him, her green eyes wide with unconcealed fear. "It would absolutely destroy her, Nathaniel, and I don't think I could put her back together again." "I'm not going anywhere," he said firmly, stepping closer. "Elena, I know I have to prove that. I know words aren't enough after everything that happened, but I am not going anywhere. People say that, and then life gets complicated and priorities shift," she countered, her voice strained. "Look at me." Nathaniel stepped closer still, close enough to see the distinct flecks of amber gold in her eyes. "I'm not going anywhere. Whatever it takes to prove that to you, to her, I will do it." Elena searched his face for a long, agonizing moment, trying to find a lie, a fissure, anything that might suggest a lack of resolve. "She drew us as a family, Nathaniel," she revealed softly. "In her mind, we're already there. But families aren't just about shared DNA or good intentions. They're about showing up every single day. I want to show up, even when it's hard, even when she's sick and cranky and throws a tantrum because her socks feel weird. Especially then. Even when I'm exhausted and short-tempered, and not the idealized woman you fell in love with 4 years ago." The question hung between them, loaded with vulnerability and a terrifying hope for the future. "Especially then," Nathaniel repeated softly, his gaze steady, unwavering. Elena studied his face for another long moment, then nodded slowly, a single confirmation of surrender and acceptance. "Okay. But Nathaniel, if you're going to be part of this, really part of this, there can't be any more secrets. No more half-truths or careful omissions. Luna deserves honesty, even when it's complicated." "Agreed," he confirmed immediately. "When do we tell her who I really am?" Elena glanced ahead to where Luna was attempting to befriend a perpetually nervous squirrel. "Soon, but not today. Today was about colors and crackers and secret places. Let her have today." As they reached the park exit, Luna ran back to them, slightly out of breath but glowing with happiness. "Next Saturday?" she asked hopefully. "Same time, same ducks," Nathaniel confirmed with a smile. "But Luna, maybe next week you can show me more of your favorite colors. I'd like to learn about all of them." "All of them?" Luna's eyes widened with pure, scientific delight. That might take a very long time, Mr. Nathaniel. I know a lot about colors. I have time, he said simply, the weight of his commitment settling into his bones. All the time in the world. As Elena and Luna walked away toward the avenue, Luna's voice drifted back to him, filled with excited plans. Mommy, do you think Mr. Nathaniel would like to see my butterfly collection and my rock garden and the place where I found the heart-shaped leaf? Elena's response was too quiet to hear, but Nathaniel found himself smiling, a deep, satisfied grin, as he watched them disappear into the busy afternoon crowd. For the first time since this entire chaotic situation began, he didn't feel like he was chasing the past, desperately trying to apologize. He felt like he was standing still, actively building the future. Thursday started like any ordinary day in the corporate tower, measured by meetings and quarterly projections, until Nathaniel's phone rang at 2:47 p.m. Elena's name flashed on the screen, and the panic in her voice was immediate, raw, and terrifyingly efficient. Nathaniel! Her words came out breathless, strained, and nearly incoherent. I know this isn't. I don't know who else to call. Luna's in the hospital. The world tilted violently on its axis. Nathaniel was on his feet and already reaching for his jacket, throwing his office door open before he had consciously decided to move. What happened? Is she okay? Which hospital? Mount Sinai. She fell at preschool during playground time. Hit her head on the monkey bars. They think she might have a concussion. And there's... Elena's voice cracked, dissolving into a ragged gasp. There's blood. And she keeps asking for you. She keeps saying she wants Mr. Nathaniel to make the scary things go away. I'm coming now, Elena. Are you okay? Do you need? I'm scared, Elena whispered. And in those two simple, honest words, Nathaniel heard the echoes of every nightmare a parent could possibly face. I'm so scared, and I don't know what I'm doing, and she's so little. Breathe, Nathaniel commanded, already inside the executive elevator, pressing the garage button with more force than necessary. I'm 10 minutes away. She's going to be fine. Kids are resilient, Elena. She is going to be fine. He wasn't sure if he was reassuring her or desperately trying to anchor himself. Traffic was brutal, a slow-moving river of indifference, and Nathaniel found himself doing things he hadn't done since he was a reckless teenager. Running red lights, taking unauthorized shoulders, honking aggressively at jaywalkers. Every second felt like an eternity when Luna was hurt and scared, and asking for him. The thought was both heartwarming and terrifying. When did he become someone she instinctively turned to in a crisis? When did he become important enough in her small, perfect world that she wanted him when everything felt scary? Mount Sinai's pediatric emergency department was a scene of controlled, weary chaos. Crying children, exhausted, pale parents, and medical staff moving with purposeful, practiced efficiency. Nathaniel spotted Elena in the waiting area. She was still wearing her flour-dusted apron from the confectionery, her auburn hair escaping its bun in stressed, damp wisps. She looked up when he approached, and the profound, immediate relief in her green eyes nearly brought him to his knees. Thank God, she breathed, the words barely audible. And then she was in his arms, shaking violently against his chest, clutching the lapels of his suit coat. I couldn't reach Mrs. Patterson, and my parents are in Oregon, and I didn't know who else would come. The admission hit him harder than any declaration of love could have. She hadn't called him because she had to. She had called him because, in her moment of deepest, paralyzing fear, he was the person she trusted implicitly to help carry the weight of their world. Where is she? He asked gently, rubbing soothing circles on Elena's back. Exactly the way he used to when she had nightmares 4 years ago. They took her for a CT scan. Room 14, Elena murmured, pulling back just enough to look at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. But Nathaniel, she doesn't know you're her father yet. But when she woke up after the fall, the first thing she asked for was you. Not her favorite stuffed animal, not her blanket. You. Before Nathaniel could process the magnitude of that statement, a nurse approached them. Ms. Whitaker, Luna's back from imaging. She's asking for her mommy and someone called Mr. Nathaniel. That's me, Nathaniel said immediately, his voice hoarse. The nurse led them through the double doors into the pediatric ward, where Luna lay in a hospital bed that made her look impossibly small and frail. Her dark hair was matted with dried blood on one side, and there was a bright butterfly bandage covering a superficial cut on her forehead. But her blue eyes, his blue eyes, were alert and immediately brightened with profound relief when she saw them both. Mr. Nathaniel. Her voice was smaller and thinner than usual, but filled with absolute conviction. You came? I knew you would come. Of course I came, sweetheart. Nathaniel approached the bed carefully, his heart breaking at how fragile she looked, surrounded by the cold, gleaming metal of medical equipment. How are you feeling? My head hurts, Luna admitted, reaching out with a small hand that had an IV taped securely to the back. And the doctors keep asking me questions, and I don't like the lights, and everything smells like cleaning stuff. I know. Baby? Elena moved to the other side of the bed, smoothing Luna's hair away from the bandage with infinite tenderness. But the doctors are just making sure you're okay. Mr. Nathaniel, Luna said seriously, can you tell my head to stop hurting? You're good at fixing things. The innocent request shattered something deep in Nathaniel's chest. She thought he could fix anything. She trusted him with that kind of faith. I wish I could, Luna, he said gently, taking her small hand in his. But the doctors here are much better at fixing hurt heads than I am. I'm only good at fixing business things. What kind of business things? Luna asked, apparently deciding the conversation was preferable to focusing on her pain. Well, Nathaniel said, settling carefully into the hard plastic chair beside her bed. I help people build houses and stores and places where families can live and work. Do you build playgrounds? Luna's eyes widened with intense interest despite her discomfort. Sometimes. Can you build me a playground that doesn't have mean monkey bars? Elena laughed despite the fresh tracks of tears on her cheeks, and Nathaniel found himself grinning through his own relief. I think that could definitely be arranged. A doctor entered the room, a kind-faced woman in her 50s with graying hair and gentle, efficient hands. Luna, I'm Dr. Martinez. I have some very good news. Is my head going to be okay? Luna asked seriously. Your head is going to be perfectly fine, Dr. Martinez confirmed, consulting her tablet. The CT scan shows no serious damage. You have a mild concussion, which means you bumped your brain a little bit, but it's going to heal completely. What about the blood? Elena asked, her voice still tight with underlying concern. Head wounds always bleed more than they should. Dr. Martinez explained kindly. It looks much scarier than it actually is. The cut will heal in a few days, and the concussion symptoms should resolve within a week. She'll need rest, limited screen time, and monitoring for any changes in behavior, but she is going to be completely fine. The relief that swept through Nathaniel was so profound, so absolute, that he felt his knees go weak beneath the chair. Luna was okay. His daughter was okay. Can I go home now? Luna asked hopefully. In a little while, Dr. Martinez said. We want to observe you for another hour or two just to be safe. But yes, you can absolutely go home today. After the doctor left, Luna looked between Elena and Nathaniel with the deeply serious expression she always wore when contemplating important, abstract matters. Mr. Nathaniel, she said finally. Yes, sweetheart. Are you going to stay with me and Mommy until my head is all better? The question was so innocent, yet it carried an emotional weight that made Elena go very still beside the bed. This was the moment, the unforeseen opening, they had been waiting for to tell Luna the truth. Luna, Elena said gently, her voice wavering slightly. Mr. Nathaniel and I need to tell you something important. Is it scary important or happy important? Luna asked, with the profound wisdom of someone who'd learned that adult conversations could go either way. It's happy important, Nathaniel said quickly, though his heart was racing like a startled rabbit. Luna, do you remember how we talked about having the same eyes? Same blue, same shape, same thinking face. Well, sometimes when people have the same eyes and the same thinking face, it's because they're related. Nathaniel continued, choosing his words with agonizing care. Like how you and Mommy both have the same nose. Luna studied his face intently, then looked at Elena, then back at him. Related how? Elena took a shaky breath, placing a reassuring hand on Luna's small arm. Sweetheart, Mr. Nathaniel is your daddy. The words hung in the sterile air of the hospital room, surrounded only by the quiet beeping of monitors and the distant sounds of the busy ward. Luna blinked slowly, processing this information with the meticulous consideration she applied to all new concepts, such as the proper curtsy of a swan. My daddy, she repeated quietly. Yes, Nathaniel said, his voice rough with emotion, tears blurring the edges of his vision. I'm your daddy, Luna. I've been your daddy since the day you were born, even though I didn't know about you until very recently. Where were you before? Luna asked, not accusingly, but with genuine, purely logical curiosity, seeking an explanation for the absence. It was the question Nathaniel had been dreading, but also the one he was most prepared to answer honestly. I was far away, he said simply. Not because I didn't want to be with you, but because Mommy and I had some grown-up problems a long time ago, and I didn't know you existed. But as soon as I found out about you, I wanted more than anything to be part of your life. Luna was quiet for a long moment, her blue eyes, their blue eyes, moving between Elena and Nathaniel as she processed this monumental revelation. So that's why you're so good at duck feeding, she said finally, her brow furrowed slightly. And why you understand about Prince Featherworth being royal, and why you knew the goose management rules without me having to teach you very much. Exactly, Nathaniel said, fighting back tears at her perfect, heart-wrenching 3-year-old logic. And that's why you came when I was hurt, Luna continued, settling the final piece of the puzzle into place. Because daddies come when their little girls are hurt. Always, Nathaniel said firmly, squeezing her hand. Daddies always come. Luna nodded seriously, satisfied, then looked directly at Elena. Mommy, does this mean I have a daddy now? Like, really have one, not just wish I had one? The question broke Elena's composure completely. Tears streamed down her face as she leaned down to kiss Luna's forehead just above the bandage. Yes, baby. You really have a daddy now. Good, Luna said with simple satisfaction. I was getting tired of being the only one in my preschool class without a daddy story for Father's Day projects. The matter-of-fact way she accepted the news was both heartbreaking and beautiful. To Luna, this wasn't a sudden complication or an upsetting change. It was simply the completion of something she intuitively knew had been missing. Luna, Nathaniel said carefully, his throat tight. How do you feel about this? About me being your daddy? Luna considered this seriously, tilting her head in the gesture that was purely, unmistakably his. I feel happy, she said finally. And I feel like maybe this is why I loved you so fast when we first met at Mommy's shop. Maybe my heart knew before my brain did. Maybe it did. Nathaniel agreed, his voice thick with emotion. Daddy, Luna said experimentally, testing the sound of the word, letting it settle into the air. Yes. When we go home, will you read me a story? Mommy always reads me stories when I don't feel good. But now I have 2 people who can read me stories. I would love to read you a story, Luna. And will you teach me about building things? Since you're good at building and I'm good at imagining, we could build truly amazing things together, like a kingdom for the ducks. And will you help me take care of Captain Quack and Prince Featherworth? Because duck families need people families to look after them and make sure they have crackers. Absolutely. Luna smiled, the first genuine, unrestrained smile since the trauma of the accident. And Nathaniel felt the fragmented pieces of his existence suddenly click together. His entire world shifted into perfect, profound alignment. This easy acceptance, this uncomplicated love that asked for nothing but presence, this sense of finally, irrevocably belonging somewhere. This was the immense, yawning emptiness he had been carrying for years. Daddy, Luna said again, drawing out the word, clearly testing and enjoying the sound of it. Yes, sweetheart. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're my daddy. And I'm really glad you came so fast when I was scared. Nathaniel leaned down slowly and kissed her forehead with feather-light tenderness, avoiding the small, pale bandage. I'm glad too, Luna. And I promise you, from now on, whenever you're scared or hurt or happy or celebrating anything at all, I'll be here. Promise. Promise. Elena watched this exchange from the doorway, hot tears streaming down her face. But they were tears of pure relief and overwhelming joy, not the paralyzing fear she had lived with the day before. This was the impossible, incandescent dream she had never dared to articulate. Luna having a father who loved her completely, unconditionally, and without any lingering reservations or fear of commitment. You know what? Luna announced suddenly, pulling her attention back to the present with characteristic abruptness. I think this is the best day ever. Even though I hit my head. How can it possibly be the best day if you got hurt? Elena asked gently, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. Because, Luna said, stating the obvious with the profound, undeniable wisdom only a 3-year-old possesses. Sometimes the best things happen after the scary things, like finding out you have everything you didn't know you were missing. Nathaniel looked up, meeting Elena's gaze over Luna's bright red hair. In the depths of her green eyes, he saw the exact same revelation reflected back at him. Luna wasn't the only one who had discovered what she was missing. They all had. The next week passed like a quiet, gentle revolution. Nathaniel had immediately taken time off work, an act that would have been utterly unthinkable to the rigidly controlled man he was just a month prior, to focus entirely on Luna's recovery and presence. He spent his days in Elena's small, sun-dappled apartment above the confectionery, reading stories until his throat was dry, building elaborate block castles that violated the laws of physics, and diligently learning the intricate, often frustrating rules of 3-year-old logic and imagination. Elena's apartment was the antithesis of his sterile, minimalist penthouse. It was a haven of warm, inviting chaos. Crayons were scattered like confetti on the worn coffee table. Children's books were stacked precariously in every corner, leaning towers of adventure. Finger paintings, bright and bold, were magnetized to a refrigerator that hummed a contented, domestic tune in the background. Luna's artwork covered every available wall space, transforming the small living area into a vibrant, shifting gallery of pure imagination and fierce, unconditional love. Daddy, Luna called from her sprawling nest of pillows on the living room floor, where she was ostensibly supposed to be resting but was instead directing an elaborate, highly stressful tea party for her entire menagerie of stuffed animals. Mr. Elephant says his tea is too cold, but Miss Giraffe says hers is too hot. How do we fix that? Nathaniel looked up from the laptop resting on his knees, where he had been futilely attempting to answer urgent emails while simultaneously monitoring Luna for any lingering concussion symptoms. Have you tried asking them to share? Maybe Mr. Elephant's cold tea and Miss Giraffe's hot tea could become perfectly warm, balanced tea if they mixed them together in the teapot. Luna's face instantly lit up with the delight of a major intellectual breakthrough. That's brilliant, Daddy. You're very smart about tea problems. From the threshold of the kitchen came the soft, musical sound of Elena's laughter, and Nathaniel felt that now familiar, deep warmth spread through his chest, anchoring him. Daddy. The word still caught him off guard every single time Luna used it, and it still ignited an intense, driving need to prove himself worthy of the weighty title. How's the patient doing? Elena appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel that read, "Kiss the cook," in faded, affectionate letters. She's currently bossing around her stuffed animals and solving complex beverage temperature issues, Nathaniel reported, his lips curving into a smile. I'd say she's feeling much better, perhaps too much better. I can hear you talking about me, Luna announced with mock indignation, narrowing her eyes. And for your information, I am conducting very important business meetings with my animal friends, not bossing them. My sincerest apologies, CEO Luna, Elena said seriously, playing along instantly. We didn't mean to interrupt your important negotiations or breach the confidence of your board. Luna giggled, the momentary seriousness evaporating. But then a deeper, more challenging seriousness took its place. Mommy, is Daddy going to keep staying with us even after my head is all better and I don't need nighttime medicine anymore? The question hung in the quiet, charged air between the adults like an unspoken challenge. Nathaniel had been sleeping on Elena's slightly too short couch for 3 consecutive nights, close enough to respond instantly if Luna needed anything. But the arrangement felt both inherently temporary and simultaneously loaded with infinite, terrifying possibilities they hadn't yet named. That's... Elena glanced quickly at Nathaniel, a visible flash of deep uncertainty flickering in her usually steady green eyes. That's something Daddy and I need to talk about. Adult talk. Adult talk? Luna asked with the weary resignation of a seasoned negotiator who was all too familiar with being excluded from the crucial grown-up conversations. Yes, adult talk, Elena confirmed gently. Fine, Luna sighed dramatically, flopping back onto her pillows. But can you do your adult talk while I have my quiet time? Because I don't want to miss anything interesting if you decide to discuss dinosaurs or spaceships. An hour later, after Luna had finally been settled for her afternoon rest with a towering pile of picture books and strict, reiterated instructions to stay horizontally positioned, Nathaniel and Elena found themselves completely alone in the cozy kitchen. It was the first time they had been truly alone since the frantic chaos of the hospital, and the air between them crackled with the heavy weight of shared history and unresolved tension. Coffee? Elena offered, already reaching with practiced precision for the familiar ceramic mugs. Please. Nathaniel watched her move around the small, efficient kitchen. She knew exactly where every spoon and every spice jar belonged in this space she had painstakingly created for herself and Luna. This was her hard-won domain, her sanctuary, and he was still very much a tentative guest in it. She's incredible, he said softly, as Elena handed him a steaming mug, the warmth immediately leaching into his chilled hands. Elena, what you've done with her. The person she's becoming. It's truly extraordinary. We did it together. Elena corrected immediately, settling into the chair directly across from him at the small, round table. Even when you weren't physically here, she carried essential parts of you. Your stubbornness, your meticulous problem-solving skills, your sheer, audacious way of making everything seem utterly possible. She has your light. I missed so much. The admission came out raw and uneven, rougher than he had intended. Her first words. Her first uncertain steps. Her first birthday party. I missed Christmas mornings and the chaos of bedtime stories and doctor's appointments. I missed her learning to tie her shoes and counting past 10. I missed 3 years of ordinary life. Nathaniel. Elena's voice was gentle, a low, firm anchor. You absolutely cannot change the past. Trust me, I've tried to replay those years 1,000 times. But you can choose right now what happens next. What do I choose? He leaned forward, studying the sincere gravity in her face. Elena, I want to be a permanent part of this. Part of Luna's beautiful life. Part of your life. But I honestly don't know what that looks like in practical terms. I don't know what you want from me now. Elena was quiet for a long, weighty moment, staring deep into the rich surface of her coffee, as if the dark liquid held the terrifying, complex answers to questions she wasn't certain she was ready to ask or hear. For years ago, she said finally, her voice low and steady, I would have told you I wanted forever. Marriage, maybe more children, growing old together, the whole terrifying fairy tale. But now I want someone who shows up every single day. Someone who doesn't panic and run when things inevitably get complicated or scary or different from what they meticulously planned. She looked up then, meeting his gaze directly and holding it captive. I want someone who loves Luna not because she's convenient or incredibly adorable, but because she is his daughter. Unconditionally, imperfectly, completely. And what about you? Nathaniel asked quietly, his own breath catching. What do you want for yourself, Elena? Elena's smile was fleeting, sad, and impossibly beautiful. I stopped asking myself that question a very long time ago. The moment Luna was born, I learned to want only what was definitively best for her, and everything else became secondary noise. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have left. Elena stood abruptly, moving to the window that overlooked the small, overgrown garden behind the building. Nathaniel, I cannot. I will not go back to being the woman who lived and breathed for someone else's attention and validation. I can't be the Elena who waited by the phone, who analyzed every single text message, and wondered desperately if you really meant it when you said you loved me. I did mean it. I know you did in your own way, she conceded, turning slightly to face him. But meaning it wasn't enough, was it? You loved me, yes, but you loved your control and your carefully structured life more. You loved me, but not quite enough to fight for us when things got genuinely hard and messy. The words stung with the cold precision of absolute truth. I was scared, Nathaniel admitted, the confession tasting like ash. Terrified, actually. What we had was so immediate, so intense, so consuming. I had never felt anything like that kind of raw emotion before, and I literally didn't know how to handle it responsibly. So, you handled it by walking away. So, I handled it by walking away. He agreed, the painful admission hanging in the air between them. And I have genuinely regretted that decision every single day since. Elena turned fully from the window to face him, her expression unforgiving. Regret isn't enough either, Nathaniel. Good intentions aren't enough to build a life on. I need to know absolutely that if things get difficult again, and they will get difficult, I promise you that you won't run this time. I need to know that you are choosing this life, this messiness, not because you feel guilty or nostalgic, but because you genuinely, unequivocally want it. I do want it. He stood, moving slowly closer to her, careful not to invade her defined space. Elena, these past few days, just being here with you and Luna, feeling the rhythm of your life. It's the first time in 4 years that I've felt like myself. The real, exposed version of myself, not the careful, controlled, guarded person I became to survive. And what happens when the novelty wears off? She challenged, her voice hard. When Luna has epic, screaming tantrums and I'm stressed about bakery bills, and we disagree fundamentally about parenting decisions. What happens when this stops feeling like a romantic, immediate fairy tale and starts feeling exactly like real, grinding life? Then we figure it out together, side by side. Nathaniel reached for her hands, releasing a silent breath of relief when she didn't pull away from his touch. Elena, I know I have to earn your trust back. I know I can't just show up and expect you to believe that I've completely changed. But I promise you I am not the same man who walked out that day 4 years ago. How do I know that for sure? Because the man I was 4 years ago, he said, holding her gaze steadily, would have immediately hired an expensive nanny and set up a massive trust fund and demanded to see Luna only on strictly scheduled weekends. He would have tried to solve everything with money and lawyers and careful, compartmentalized scheduling. Nathaniel's thumbs traced gentle, insistent circles across Elena's knuckles. But I don't want to be Luna's weekend father. I want to be the person she instinctively calls when she's scared or has a bad dream. The one who knows precisely how she likes her pancakes cut and exactly what story helps her fall asleep fastest. I want to be here for the mundane, frustrating moments, not just the milestone ones. And what about us? Elena's voice was barely a whisper, fragile and uncertain. What do you want from us? I want to fall in love with who you are now, Elena, not who you used to be, he confessed honestly. I want to learn about the woman who took a devastating betrayal and turned it into a successful, vibrant business. The woman who raised an incredible, spirited daughter alone, who built this beautiful, warm life from nothing but determination and overwhelming love. Nathaniel stepped closer, close enough now to see the minute flecks of gold in the depths of her green eyes. I want to earn the undeniable right to be a permanent part of the story you are still bravely writing. Elena searched his face for a long, agonizing moment, and Nathaniel held his breath, bracing himself internally for her final verdict. There are rules, she said finally, the words cutting through the tension. Okay, tell me. Luna comes first, always. If there is ever a fundamental choice between what she needs and what we want as adults, she wins. End of discussion. Agreed. No secrets, absolutely no half-truths, and no protecting me from difficult conversations because you think I can't handle them. We face everything together immediately. Agreed. And Nathaniel? Elena's voice dropped, soft but deadly serious. If you break her heart, if you make promises you don't keep, If you let her down the way you let me down 4 years ago, I will never, ever forgive you, and you will lose us both forever. Do you fully comprehend that consequence? I understand, he affirmed, every muscle tense. Do you really? Because she adores you already. She talks about you constantly. She's already started planning elaborate activities for when Daddy comes home and drawing pictures of our family unit. She's all in, Nathaniel, in the way only children can be. And if you hurt her, I won't. Nathaniel gently cupped Elena's face in his hands, forcing her to look solely at him. Elena, I swear to you, I will never hurt her. I will never let her down again. And I will spend every single day proving that I deserve the honor of being her father. And what about being my... Elena trailed off, uncertainty flickering across her features like candlelight. You're what? I don't know. That's the problem. I don't know what we are or what we're becoming, or if we're even making a terrible, colossal mistake. Then let's find out together, slowly. Nathaniel leaned his forehead against hers, closing his eyes and breathing in her familiar, comforting scent of vanilla and warm sugar. Elena, I don't need to know what we're calling this arrangement. I just need to know that you are willing to try with me. I'm terrified, she whispered against his skin. So am I. Good, Elena said, a small, genuine smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Maybe being scared means we're taking it seriously this time. Maybe it does. They stood there in the late afternoon light filtering through Elena's kitchen window, holding each other carefully, like something incredibly precious that had been shattered once and might, horrifyingly, break again. But this time, Nathaniel realized, they would be much, much more careful with each other's hearts. This time, they would build something deliberately meant to last. Mommy, Daddy, Luna's voice suddenly called from the living room, startling them apart. My quiet time is over now, and I have very important things to tell you about my book. Elena and Nathaniel looked at each other and shared a smile. It was the first real, unburdened, uncomplicated smile they had exchanged since this entire stressful ordeal began. Come, sweetheart, Elena called back, her voice already lighter, as they walked together toward the living room, toward Luna's excited chatter about talking animals and magical kingdoms. Nathaniel felt a profound, satisfying weight settle deep in his chest. This was exactly what home felt like. Not perfectly arranged, not without its immense challenges and fears, but real and warm and undeniably full of fierce, redeeming love. And for the first time in 4 years, that was exactly where he needed to be. 3 months had passed since the hospital emergency, and their little family unit had found a comfortable rhythm that felt both beautifully natural and utterly miraculous. Nathaniel had unofficially moved into Elena's apartment, though his immense penthouse remained a cold, silent symbol of the life he had decisively left behind. Sterile, expensive, and completely empty of everything that truly mattered now. It was a crisp December morning when everything shifted and threatened to break again. Nathaniel was in Elena's kitchen, attempting to master the notoriously tricky art of heart-shaped pancakes, Luna's current breakfast obsession, when his phone rang violently. The caller ID flashed, and the sight of the name made his blood run instantly cold. Harrison Mills, senior partner at his investment firm, and the powerful man who controlled Nathaniel's entire professional future. Nathaniel. Harrison's voice was clipped, brutally businesslike, and utterly unforgiving the moment he answered. We need to talk. My office. 1 hour sharp. Harrison, what's this about? I'm currently on extended leave. The Millennium Project. Your little domestic situation has catastrophically compromised the biggest deal of our entire careers, and I am not at all sure the firm can survive your personal distraction. The line went dead with a decisive click. Nathaniel stared down at his phone. Elena's cheerful, sunny kitchen suddenly felt alarmingly fragile around him. The Millennium Project, a $2 billion sustainable housing development, was his career baby, the culmination of 5 years of grueling negotiations and planning. It was the legacy project that was meant to define his standing in the industry forever. Daddy, you're burning my pancakes, Luna observed matter-of-factly from her booster seat, pointing a small finger. Sorry, sweetheart. Nathaniel quickly flipped the pancakes, but his mind was racing, dangerously close to panic. What exactly had Harrison meant by domestic situation? How could Luna and Elena possibly compromise a multi-billion-dollar business deal? Everything okay? Elena asked, appearing silently in the doorway, concern instantly etched across her face. I'm not sure, he admitted. Nathaniel served Luna her slightly overcooked heart pancakes. I have to go to the office immediately. Something about the Millennium Project. Elena's expression tightened visibly. She had learned enough about his business structure to know just how crucial and volatile this particular deal was. Is it serious? I don't know, but I'll find out. An hour later, Nathaniel sat stiffly in Harrison Mills's cavernous, mahogany-paneled office, facing the man who held his entire career in his well-manicured hands. Harrison was 62, silver-haired, and possessed the kind of calculated, intimidating presence that could easily make powerful senators nervous. Today, he looked precisely like a general preparing for total war. Nathaniel, Harrison began without any polite preamble, leaning forward. The Yamamoto Group is threatening to pull out of the Millennium Project entirely. Nathaniel felt the floor drop out from under him. The Yamamoto Group was their primary crucial investor. Without their capital, the entire enormous development would collapse into dust. Why? What reason did they give? Because apparently your personal life has become a public liability, Harrison said coldly, sliding a sleek tablet across the polished desk. Read. The screen displayed a malicious gossip column from a Manhattan socialite website, complete with grainy, intrusive photographs that made Nathaniel's stomach clench violently. There he was, leaving Elena's building early in the morning, coffee mug in hand. There was Luna, clearly identifiable, holding his hand near the carousel in Central Park. The cruel headline screamed, Billionaire's Secret Family. Love Child Scandal Rocks Investment World. The Yamamoto Group values discretion and intensely traditional family structures above all else. Harrison continued, his voice heavy with contempt. The idea that their business partner is living in sin with his illegitimate child's mother is deeply problematic for them. They fear instability. Luna isn't illegitimate. She's my daughter, fully and legally. Nathaniel ground out, fighting back a wave of protective fury. A daughter you abandoned for 3 years, according to this article. A daughter whose mother you're now shacked up with in some sordid reunion tour. Harrison's voice was cutting and full of scorn. Nathaniel, this makes you look unstable, unreliable, and morally compromised. These are absolutely not qualities the Yamamoto Group associates with sound, long-term business partnerships. Nathaniel quickly read through the entire inflammatory article, his cold anger building with every calculated, poisonous word. The piece painted Elena as an opportunistic, grasping single mother who had trapped him with a convenient pregnancy claim 4 years ago. It portrayed Luna as a tiresome burden he had finally accepted out of guilty obligation. It took their beautiful, complicated, intensely real story of reconciliation and twisted it into a tawdry scandal designed purely for tabloid consumption. This is garbage journalism, fabricated filth, Nathaniel said flatly, slamming the tablet back onto the desk. Perhaps, but it is garbage journalism that is currently threatening to cost us $2 billion and destroy the firm's reputation. Harrison countered, unmoved. He leaned forward again, his gaze predatory. Nathaniel, I've known you for 8 years. You are brilliant, intensely driven, and you've made this firm an extraordinary amount of money. But this situation right now is untenable. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying you have an immediate choice to make. Harrison's voice lowered, which somehow made it 10 times more ominous. You can end this domestic arrangement with the woman and child, return to your previous, focused lifestyle and salvage the Yamamoto deal. Or you can continue playing house and watch your entire career implode spectacularly. The words hit Nathaniel like physical blows, knocking the air from his lungs. You're asking me to abandon my daughter. Again. I am asking you to rigorously prioritize your professional obligations over your personal complications. That is the definition of a responsible partner. She's not a complication. She's my daughter. A daughter who is about to cost you everything you've built and worked for, Harrison stated plainly. He stood, moving with deliberate slowness to the panoramic windows overlooking the cold December Manhattan skyline. Nathaniel, the Yamamoto Group wants a private meeting tomorrow morning. They want concrete assurances that you've returned to being the focused, unencumbered businessman they originally invested with. Give them those assurances and we move forward. Don't. And they walk away. And if they walk, the Millennium Project dies. Your reputation in the industry dies. Your partnership in this firm dies. Everything you've meticulously built over the last decade disappears overnight. Harrison turned back to face him, his eyes like chips of ice. Nathaniel, choose wisely. Families can potentially be rebuilt later. Careers like this, however, they don't come twice. The drive back to Elena's apartment felt like a slow, agonizing funeral procession. Nathaniel's mind churned desperately through possibilities, searching for alternatives. For any way to have both the prestigious career he'd built and the cherished family he'd only just found. But Harrison's ultimatum was stark, absolute, and impossibly clear. He could have professional success or he could have personal happiness, but he absolutely could not have both. Elena was in the confectionery when he arrived, currently helping a customer select a tower of miniature birthday cupcakes, while Luna played quietly in a corner with her coloring books, surrounded by the sweet scent of vanilla and chocolate. The scene was so perfectly ordinary, so beautifully domestic, that Nathaniel felt a terrible, sharp pang of heartbreak just looking at it. All finished with work? Elena asked when the customer finally left, but her casual smile faded completely when she saw the devastation on his expression. What happened? What did he say? Nathaniel glanced quickly at Luna, who was humming softly to herself, completely absorbed in creating another crayon masterpiece. Can we talk upstairs? Now. 20 minutes later, after Luna had been settled in the living room with a preferred snack and her favorite animated movie, Nathaniel told Elena everything, leaving nothing out. The ultimatum, the treacherous Yamamoto Group, the scandalous article, and the impossible choice he'd been violently forced to make. Elena listened in stunned silence, her face growing progressively paler with every word he uttered. So, she said when he finally finished, her voice flat and hollow, they want you to choose between us, your real life, and your career, your legacy. Yes. And what are you going to choose, Nathaniel? The question hung in the quiet, stifling air like a loaded gun, pointed directly at his chest. Nathaniel looked at Elena. He really, truly looked at her. Her auburn hair was pulled back haphazardly in a messy bun, and there was flour dusted lightly on her apron from the day's baking. She looked tired, worried, and absolutely, undeniably beautiful. More importantly, she looked like home. Elena, what kind of man would I be? He asked, the words catching in his throat. If I abandoned my daughter a second time, deliberately, for a business deal. A practical one, Elena said quietly, stepping back slightly. Nathaniel, this is your life's work we're talking about. Everything you've built, everything you've sacrificed for. Are you asking me to just pack up and leave so you can save this deal? Elena's eyes suddenly filled with hot tears she couldn't stop. I'm asking you to be sure, absolutely sure, because if you stay, if you choose us over this deal, there's no guarantee you'll ever get another professional chance like this. Your career might be entirely, never recover. And if you go, you prove that everything Harrison Mills said is true. That Luna and I are complications you can discard when they become inconvenient. Nathaniel moved closer to her, taking her hands in his, the warmth of her skin grounding him in the present moment. Elena, for years ago, I walked away from you because I was scared of how much I loved you. I was terrified of losing control, of needing someone so much that it changed who I was. I spent my whole life being defined by my ambition and my control. And now I know that loving you and Luna didn't change who I am. It didn't destroy the man I was. It revealed who I was always meant to be. A man capable of real commitment, not just monumental deals. Nathaniel cupped her face gently, tracing the line of her cheekbone with his thumb. I don't want to be the man who builds glittering towers of glass and steel but has no one to come home to. I don't want to be successful and profoundly empty. I want to be Luna's father, present and accounted for, and you're whatever you'll let me be. I want to be your partner. Even if it costs you everything, Elena? Elena, you and Luna aren't costing me anything. You're giving me everything that actually matters. You are my true bottom line. From the living room came Luna's voice, a bright, clear sound that shattered the tension, calling for her parents. They found her standing by the window, her face pressed against the cold glass, breath fogging the pain. Daddy, it's snowing. Luna's voice was filled with a pure, unfiltered wonder that only childhood can hold. Real snow. Can we go build a snowman? Can we have hot chocolate after? Can we make snow angels? Nathaniel looked at his daughter's excited face, lit by the pale afternoon light filtering through the flurries. Then at Elena's hopeful expression, the fear receding behind a wash of relief, then back at Luna. This single, perfect, snow-filled moment was what he was choosing. Not just love, but life. Not just the hollow echo of corporate success, but deep, enduring significance. We can do all of those things, sweetheart, and more, Nathaniel said, lifting Luna into his arms and breathing in the familiar scent of playground dirt and innocence. But first, Daddy has to make a very important phone call. Harrison answered on the first ring, his voice sharp and impatient, clearly expecting a capitulation. Ro, tell me you've come to your senses and remembered what's important. I have, Nathaniel said, walking to the window where Luna was now drawing pictures in the condensation on the glass. A family of stick figures beneath a scribbled sun. I'm choosing my family. I'm choosing Elena and Luna. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for a long, heavy moment. It was the sound of a mentor's disappointment turning into calculated fury. You're making a catastrophic mistake, Nathaniel. You're throwing away a dynasty. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. And I'll sleep better because of it. The Yamamoto Group will walk. You know they will. Then they walk. Your career will survive this loss eventually. And if it doesn't, I'll build something new, something better, something that doesn't require me to abandon the people I love. I'm no longer building monuments to my own ego, Harrison. After Harrison hung up, the line clicking dead with harsh finality, Nathaniel turned to find Elena and Luna watching him with identical expressions of bright, anxious hope and immeasurable love. Did you just... Elena began, her voice barely a whisper, afraid to break the fragile moment. I just chose us, Nathaniel confirmed, the words strong and steady. I chose love over money, family over career, happiness over what other people think success should look like. Luna, who didn't fully understand the weight of the financial conversation, but recognized its importance by the seriousness in her parents' eyes, wrapped her small arms around Nathaniel's neck, squeezing with all her might. Daddy, she said seriously, her blue eyes wide with conviction. I'm proud of you. The simple words, spoken with such earnest, unvarnished sincerity, broke something open in Nathaniel's chest. A wall of decades-old professional armor finally crumbling. This unconditional trust was what mattered. This love, this trust, this little girl who believed he was capable of anything but lying to her. I'm proud of me, too, sweetheart, he said, his voice rough with emotion, tears pricking the back of his eyes. Elena moved closer, and suddenly, Nathaniel found himself surrounded by the two people who made his world make beautiful, messy sense. Outside, the snow continued to fall on Manhattan, blanketing the city in quiet, muffling beauty. Inside, three people who'd found each other against all odds, held each other close, and began to plan their first, real Christmas together as a real family. The Millennium Project would indeed collapse without the Yamamoto Group's investment. Nathaniel's partnership at the firm would end in scandal. The financial press would have a field day with his spectacular fall from grace, calling him everything from reckless to sentimental. But as he sat in Elena's warm, spice-scented kitchen that evening, helping Luna write a letter to Santa while Elena hummed softly as she baked cookies for tomorrow's customers, Nathaniel realized that he hadn't fallen at all. He had finally truly risen to the only height that mattered, being worthy of unconditional love. And that, he thought, a profound contentment settling over him as Luna insisted that Santa needed to know about the recent adventures of Captain Quack and Prince Featherworth, was the most successful deal he'd ever closed. 18 months later, the morning sun streamed through the expansive, sustainably sourced windows of Rowe and Associates Sustainable Development. The small, boutique firm Nathaniel had built from the ground up after walking away from his cold, high-rise life. The office was smaller than his previous corner suite at the old firm. It had reclaimed wood floors and light, airy spaces instead of granite and dark mahogany, but the view was infinitely better. He could see the deep green expanse of Central Park from his desk, and more importantly, he could see the artisanal confectionery where his wife worked, its cheerful red awning visible just 3 blocks away. Wife, even 18 months after their quiet courthouse wedding, followed by a raucous reception in Elena's backyard. The word still made him smile with genuine shock and joy. "Daddy, you're daydreaming again?" Luna observed from her spot on the soft, brightly colored office couch where she was supposed to be coloring quietly while he finished his morning calls. She was 5 now and increasingly insightful. "How can you tell?" Nathaniel asked, amused by his 5-year-old's increasingly sophisticated observations. "You get that mushy look when you think about Mommy," Luna explained with the matter-of-fact tone of someone who'd become an expert on the ridiculous behavior of loving adults. "Like how Prince Featherworth looks when he sees his reflection in the pond water after preening. Prince Featherworth is vain, sweetheart. I'm just happy." "Same thing," Luna declared with absolute certainty, dismissing his adult nuance, then returned to her artwork, a detailed crayon portrait of their family that now included a distinct, small bump at Elena's midsection. The baby, a girl due in 4 months, was already the center of Luna's elaborate plans for sisterhood. She'd spent weeks explaining to Elena's growing belly about duck politics, proper crayon storage, and the absolute importance of sharing toys with Captain Quack, even the ones he gnaws on. Mr. Rowe, his assistant Jennifer, appeared in the doorway, professional and smiling, her manner far less starched than his previous corporate staff. "The Carter family is here for their site visit. Send them in." Nathaniel straightened his tie, still expensive because quality lasted, but now chosen for comfort as much as style, and prepared to show another young couple through the latest sustainable housing development that had become his signature project. The Harmony Gardens development was everything the failed Millennium Project had promised to be, but better. Smaller scale, community-focused, built with families like his own in mind, emphasizing green space and connection. It wasn't worth $2 billion, but it was worth something infinitely more valuable. It supported life, not just portfolios. It was work that mattered. Work that made the world better for Luna and the baby sister she was already fiercely, territorially protecting. After the site visit, Nathaniel collected Luna and headed to the confectionery for their daily lunch ritual. A non-negotiable break. Sweetness and light had expanded since Elena's pregnancy news. She'd hired 2 part-time bakers, both retired grandmothers, and was considering scouting a second location. Success looked vastly different than it had 4 years ago, but it felt infinitely sweeter, tasting distinctly of chocolate and vanilla bean. "Mommy!" Luna burst through the shop's door like a small hurricane of excitement and snow-dusted coat fluff. "I drew the baby's room, and I have very important architectural suggestions for the shelving units." Elena looked up from behind the counter, her auburn hair, now shoulder-length and softly styled, and her green eyes bright with the particular, undeniable glow that came with being 7 months pregnant, and completely radiantly happy. Her hand rested naturally on the curve of her belly, a gesture so natural it looked like she'd been born doing it. "Architectural suggestions?" Elena repeated seriously, wiping flour from her apron. "Well, then I definitely need to hear these. Your daddy is the expert on building things, though." "Actually," Nathaniel said, kissing Elena's cheek and marveling as he did every single day that he was allowed to do so, "I think Luna might be the real architect in this family. Have you seen her block cities lately? They're very advanced structurally." Luna agreed modestly, adjusting her imaginary construction helmet. "I'm thinking of adding elevators to the baby's room so she can reach important things like books and crackers." "Elevators?" Elena mused, pouring Nathaniel his usual coffee, decaf, since she monitored his caffeine intake too. Innovative. What else? As Luna launched into an elaborate, detailed explanation of her nursery vision, complete with load-bearing marshmallow pillars, Nathaniel watched his wife listen with the same focused, unwavering attention she gave to everything Luna said. Elena had always been a natural mother, but watching her navigate advanced pregnancy, while also being Luna's entire world, continued to amaze him daily. "How's our little soccer player today?" Nathaniel asked, placing his large, capable hand over Elena's on her belly. "Active," Elena laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "I think she's practicing her high kicks for when she meets her big sister. She's going to love Luna," Nathaniel said with absolute confidence. "How could she not? Luna is the center of the universe." "Speaking of love," Elena said, her tone shifting to something more serious, drawing him back to the world outside their little bubble. "I got a call from Manhattan Business Weekly this morning. They want to do a feature article about your firm. From Wall Street to Main Street, one man's journey to purpose-driven business." Nathaniel grimaced, already anticipating the saccharine tone and the subtle accusation of failure masked as redemption. "I'm not sure I want to be the poster child for career redemption stories. They'll just frame it as a massive professional retreat." "Why not?" Elena challenged gently, meeting his eyes across the counter. "You built something beautiful, Nathaniel. Something that matters and will last. People should know that you can choose differently and still succeed spectacularly. True success is defined by what you value." "I succeeded when I married you," Nathaniel said quietly, meaning it more than any press release he'd ever written. "Everything else is just details." Elena's smile was soft and knowing, filled with decades of shared history compressed into a few years. "That's exactly what you should tell the reporter." That evening, after Luna had been bathed, read to, and tucked into bed with elaborate bedtime negotiations, all revolving around whether stuffed animals counted as acceptable midnight snacks, only for very special occasions and only carrots, Nathaniel and Elena sat on their small balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below. Their apartment was bigger now, a comfortable, sun-filled 3-bedroom place 2 blocks from the confectionery, with enough room for Luna's sprawling art studio, Elena's home office, and the nursery that was slowly taking shape, filled with soft blues and yellows. It wasn't a penthouse, but it was filled with laughter and crayon masterpieces and the kind of comfortable, cherished chaos that came with real, lived-in love. "Do you ever miss it?" Elena asked suddenly, settling more comfortably against Nathaniel's side, drawing his warmth. "The old life, the power, the recognition, the private jets and the headlines. Do you miss being alone?" Nathaniel countered gently, understanding the root of her question. Elena considered this, watching a distant helicopter cut through the night. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of only having to worry about Luna and myself. Yes, but I don't miss the loneliness. I don't miss wondering if I was strong enough to handle everything by myself, because I always felt like I had to be. I don't miss feeling profoundly empty," Nathaniel said, rubbing her arm. "I thought success was supposed to fill that void, but it just made the emptiness more obvious, like echoing in a vast, empty hall. This," he gestured to their small, cluttered balcony, "their life, their growing family. This is the only success that actually matters. Even when Luna has tantrums because her socks feel weird, especially then, because we navigate it together. Even when I'm hormonal and cry because we're out of pickles, especially then. That's when I know I'm home. Even when the baby keeps us up all night and we're both exhausted and arguing about whose turn it is to change diapers." Nathaniel turned to face Elena fully, taking her hands in his expression completely serious. "Elena, I walked away from a $2 billion deal to have breakfast with you and Luna every morning. Do you really think a few sleepless nights are going to change my mind about where I want to be? My choice is final." Elena's smile was radiant, a lighthouse beam in the darkness. "When you put it that way, I suppose not. I love our life," Nathaniel said simply, the statement encompassing all the complexity and beauty of their shared existence. "I love that Luna leaves art supplies on my desk and insists that Captain Quack needs regular business updates on the firm's progress. I love that you hum while you work and that you still steal my coffee even though you're not supposed to have caffeine while pregnant. I love that we're building something together. Not just a family, but a life that makes coherent, beautiful sense. I love our life too, Elena said softly, resting her hand back on his cheek. I love that you show up every day, even when it's hard. I love that you chose us over everything else, and never looked back. I love that Luna doesn't remember a time when you weren't here, because you erased that possibility. Good, Nathaniel said, leaning down to kiss her forehead tenderly. Because you're stuck with me, all of you, forever. Promise. Promise. From inside the apartment came a small, insistent voice, cutting through the silence. Mommy, Daddy, I had a dream about the baby, and I think she wants to hear about Prince Featherworth's royal duties and the proper management of the castle budget. Elena and Nathaniel looked at each other and laughed. The kind of laughter that came from joy so complete it had to overflow somehow, spilling into the quiet night. Duty calls, Elena said, struggling carefully to her feet with the cautious movements of advanced pregnancy. Our duty calls, Nathaniel corrected, helping her up and supporting her weight with an arm around her back. All of ours. As they walked back into their warm, imperfect, absolutely perfect home, where Luna was waiting to share her elaborate dreams and the baby was growing stronger every day, kicking to the rhythm of their life, Nathaniel felt the same deep sense of contentment that hit him every evening. He had traded towers of glass and steel for finger paintings on the refrigerator. He had traded million-dollar deals for bedtime stories and Captain Quack's butterfly band-aids. He had traded recognition and transient power for enduring love and profound purpose, and the kind of success that couldn't be measured in bank accounts or stock portfolios. Some people might call it a fall from grace. Nathaniel called it, with complete conviction, the best decision he'd ever made. 3 years ago, if someone had told him that his greatest achievement would be earning the right to be called Daddy by a little girl with blue eyes and an imagination bigger than the city itself, he would have thought they were insane. Now, as Luna launched into an elaborate explanation of her dream, while Elena rubbed her belly and smiled, her contentment visible in every line of her face, Nathaniel couldn't imagine wanting anything more than exactly what he had. Love, it turned out, was the ultimate high-yield return on investment. And family was the only empire worth building, fortress by glorious fortress. Sometimes the most profound transformations happen not when we gain everything we thought we wanted, the accolades, the wealth, the status, but when we're brave enough to choose what actually matters. Nathaniel's journey from boardroom shark to baby bottles wasn't about losing his ambition. It was about redirecting it towards something that would last long after the stock market closed and the office lights went dark, something human and enduring. In a world that often measures success by what we accumulate rather than what we contribute, their story reminds us that the greatest victories are often the most personal ones, requiring the courage to choose love over convenience, presence over prestige, and authentic connection over artificial achievement. Would you have made the same choice Nathaniel made? When faced with the decision between career success and family happiness, what would matter most to you? Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us.
My flag sings vipers to the sky. Melodies flows gentle and free, carrying dreams across the sea. In every note a piece of me, forever here in harmony. flood sings vipers to the sky. Melodies flows gentle and free, carrying dreams across the sea. In every note, a piece of me, forever here in harmony. Music lives inside my heart. Music lives inside my heart.